You own a couple houses because you're also into real estate and renting property. You have hard assets. Maybe you have a farm or farmland. Maybe you own a cabin. A lot of you in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, you guys have cabins, and you even pass those down from generation to generation, your family cabin. Those are all hard assets. You revalue gold, what is that going to do to the hard assets that you're holding? Not just the price of silver and gold that you may hold. These are the topics we'll get into tonight with Chris Martenson. We're also going to be joined by a first-time guest. Her name, I got to practice her name a little bit. Her name is, she came to me by way of my editor, Jill. My editor, Jill, heard her. And her name is Hadia. And she's a former Muslim. Her parents were from Iran. She was, I think, maybe born here. We'll find out. And she went into Islam. She's become a believer. You got to hear her testimony because she also worked with the FBI as a contractor, the State Department. What does she think about what's going on around the world, the Gaza, Jordan, Egypt? What about the terror cells in the U.S.? Is she still concerned about those? Going to talk to her. It'll be a very interesting conversation, I'm sure, first-time guest. And then Michael Reagan, the oldest son of President Ronald Reagan, will join us tonight. You know, one of the questions I want to ask Michael is, how was his father's faith impacted after the assassination attempt on him? Because it seems as though Donald Trump has kind of had a change. Notice the difference from his first administration to his second administration. I think that may have had something to do with the attempted assassination on his life. But he says he thinks preserved him providentially and is using him. I'd like to ask Michael tonight, what kind of change did he see in his dad after the assassination attempt on his life? And we'll talk to Mike Reagan about what he thinks about what's going on with President Trump and his administration. Big show tonight, as always. But remember, folks, we are brought to you by you. Now, we could interrupt tonight's show a million times to sell you pickup trucks and a cruise and some pharmaceuticals and soap and I don't know, whatever else is they sell on mainstream television, but not here. We try to keep it going. Yeah, we have a few things we want to tell you about our sponsors, but for the most part, we keep it moving and we don't have to interrupt our interviews with commercials because you help us have this format. And the way you help us have this format is through our foundation, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. I cannot stress that enough. Unless you want us to go to having commercial breaks about every 10, 12 minutes. Another company reached out to us this week wanting to take over all of our advertising. Like, no, thanks. We like our format. As long as you guys support us through Bella Grace, our Numi, our Galatana, worldviewwater.net, Worldview Talk, all of our sponsors at worldviewtube.com/sponsors. As long as you patronize those sponsors and the foundation and our vault, we don't need to go to these other people out there, and we don't need to be interrupting our programming every 10, 12 minutes to have a commercial break. We want to stick with the format we have. Do you want us to stick with the format we have? I bet you do. I sure do as the host. Nothing would irritate me more than to constantly break for commercials. But to stick to this format, we have to have your support. So please consider going to worldviewtube.com/sponsors. Check out all of our sponsors. And of course, one of the biggest ways right here, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. All right, joining me now is Chris Martenson to talk about many things, including is President Trump and maybe Elon setting up for a cryptocurrency to compete with the Federal Reserve. You do know the Federal Reserve has pushed for a long time the idea of a central bank digital currency. They even set out, as we've talked about here for a few years, the idea of a Fed Now, and even Americans having a Fed Now wallet. You can go look that up. We've talked about it. We've shown the documentation. We've shown the paper, the PDFs printed by the Fed. Biden signed an executive order on calling for the creation of a central bank digital currency. Now President Trump is in, and Jerome Powell, Fed chairman, is saying before a congressional committee, oh, no, we have no plans of a central bank digital currency. Yeah, I wonder why. That's because there's a new boss in town. So will Donald Trump take on the Federal Reserve? And what about backing this maybe perhaps cryptocurrency that's going to compete with the Federal Reserve and be outside the Federal Reserve, what will back it? Will it be gold? Is this why President Trump is talking about perhaps revaluing our gold, of which has not happened since 1973, I read? Has it at about $42 an ounce. And I'm told that with about every $1,000 increase in the price of gold, you're adding about $1 trillion to the balance sheet of the Treasury. So raise it from 42 bucks up to, say, $3,000, about current price now, 29 something. You're talking there about $3 trillion onto the books of the Treasury. Is President Trump getting ready to back our new currency, whatever it might be, with hard assets to compete with BRICS or other nations? What about the talk of taking over Canada and Greenland? Is this about backing the currency with their minerals and their hydroelectricity and other things? Now we have President Trump tweeting out today, or putting out on social media today, what's been going on with Zelensky, that he's a dictator and he's failed and he's cost us billions of dollars to get into a war that he could have never won. And he talked Biden into giving him this billions of dollars, half of which President Trump noted today is missing. Now, what about the minerals in Ukraine? President Trump has talked about using some of those natural resources as payback to America. Again, is President Trump looking for all the hard assets he can get his hands on in order to back a coming new currency? Joining me now with Peak Prosperity is Chris Martenson. Chris, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Brennan, it's a pleasure. Let's dive right in. What do we got today?
Well, you just heard it. Respond. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you for that. I do a lot of things, but one of the things I've been most consistent on for 20 years is I'm a huge critic of the Federal Reserve.
Yes.
Right? As your listeners know, it's not federal. It's a private banking cartel. And they've been entrusted with one of the most sacred things you can entrust any entity with, which is the ability to print money out of thin air. That's all they had to do. They had one job: don't mess it up. Well, whether they were intentionally trying to destroy this country or they were negligent in their jobs, the output gets us to where we are today. They created and enabled a system where we have now IOUs and debt in the United States that collectively sum up to like 250, 300 trillion. Nobody knows. It's some number. It doesn't matter. It's unpayable. So they've gotten us backed into a corner where Federal Reserve notes are the sole obligation of the Federal Reserve. And there's no math solution to this anymore. I think the Trump administration is smart. I think they've got this. I think they understand this dynamic. They've looked at it and they've said, this system with the Federal Reserve notes is broken and it can't be fixed. Well, what do you do, right? You can't just allow that to fall apart on you all at once. What do you do? I think we're seeing the early stages of the answer to that question. And the answer is we have to come up with a parallel currency to operate alongside the Federal Reserve note while that's busy dismantling itself, so that we don't suddenly find ourselves in an airplane with no wings on it. We're going to have to start creating some new wings mid-flight. I think that's what we're seeing.
So do you think that President Trump is thinking about a new currency, a cryptocurrency of some kind? He said executive order, he's not doing central bank digital currencies. Biden had one to do it. He signed one not to do it. And now we've got Elon saying, I'm not sure there's gold in their vaults in Kentucky. And he was shocked to find out there's not an annual audit. Now he says maybe by May, we might have Fort Knox audited by May. Is President Trump and Elon setting up to say, ooh, the gold's not there, or hey, the gold is there, everybody cool down, it's there, we're going to revalue it, and then we're going to use it to back a new cryptocurrency? They have something in mind here.
They do, and we can feel the edges of it. So listen, if they already have the same conclusion you and I and everybody listening to this can come to, means they probably have. The current system is broke. I mean, broke. It's insolvent, right? It just doesn't pencil out. And so once you get to an insolvent system, you only have one question to ask and answer. Who's going to eat the losses, right? Okay, well, what if you decide to break the frame? This is the one thing that Trump has surprised me, and I always underestimated him, and I will not do it again. he breaks the frame of the negotiation all the time, right? Like you think you're negotiating about this one thing, and suddenly he's like, well, what if we just get rid of the Department of Energy? What if Rosie O'Donnell really is just that kind of lady, right? Or whatever. He breaks the frame, says the thing that you're not allowed to say, and gets the conversation into new territory. So if you know the existing system of money is broken and irreparably broken, you got to break the frame. And so if that's what we're seeing, whether we call it a cryptocurrency or a digital asset, I could easily imagine a scenario where you say, listen, we'll give Federal Reserve, thank them. They're doing a great job. Love them. But we're going to issue now an actual treasury unit of money. And it could be physical notes like we used to get that says Treasury on the top instead of Federal Reserve. But it could be something like, I don't know, XRP, which is one of the digital assets out there right now. It could be some digital token that it's a digital token and it's tied to something. In this case, allegedly, we have 261 million ounces of gold in Fort Knox and 2 other vaults systems out there. So what if we decided to back that with, here's this new digital thing. It's floating around. It's from the Treasury itself. It's America's money. And by the way, it's redeemable or backed in some way by gold. That would immediately, Brennan, form a competitor for Federal Reserve notes. And that alone, the act of having a competitor, is going to force the Federal Reserve to suddenly behave a lot more responsibly, very suddenly.
Well, I'm reading at Kitco that the idea of raising the price of gold every $1,000 increases the Treasury's general account by $1 trillion. So if we value...
Let me, can I redo that math real quick?
Yeah.
We have 261 million ounces. Let's assume they're all there. If we multiply that by 1,000, we get 261 billion.
Okay. So
either there's a lot more gold I don't know about in our vaulting system, or they're saying if we rose it from 42 to 3,000, that would be 3 times 261, 740 billion. It would, yeah. That's just the math. Unless we have a lot more gold.
Okay. Well, they must have.
Or maybe they were talking.
Well, he says that their U.S. claims to hold more than 8,000 tons of gold. So I don't know.
Yeah, the alleged number is supposed to be 261 million ounces. Now, I don't think it's all there, but there's only 3 options. It's all there. It's all missing.
And that 8,000, by the way, that 8,000 is just at Fort Knox, just to clarify. What is what one person?
I have different numbers in my head. Fort Knox should have about 44,000, just over 4,000 tons, less than 5,000.
Yeah, and this one is saying Senator Cynthia Loomis has supported a proposal to audit the Fed where the U.S. claims to hold more than 8,000 tons of gold, which has not been independently verified since 1956, they're saying.
Correct. Yeah. It hasn't been audited. It's crazy. The fact that it hasn't been audited tells you everything you need to know. Somebody's been doing some hijinks with that gold. That's clear. I mean, listen, if it was all there, they would audit it every weekend if you wanted it to. You'd be able to go to the Fort Knox gift store on your way past the tour where you'd walk past the vaults and look at them, right? And buy your T-shirt on the way out. They don't do that.
Well, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. They let you go tour the U.S. Treasury. You walk, I've done it as a kid multiple times. You walk on the ramp up above, you look down, they're printing the money. Nobody's like freaking out that you're watching them print the money. It's a great gig to watch, right? Why not let them walk by bulletproof, highly secured vaults, looking into them down or above or whatever, and saying, oh, that's really cool. It's all there. It's the people's money. There it is. Like you said, now go buy a T-shirt. Why would they not? Everybody's being screened and scanned in. You're on a stinking base, Fort Knox.
Because it's not there. We know that.
Where's it gone? Where's it gone?
Well, so, a little history here. So before we had to come off the gold standard, August 15th, 1971, they were working very hard to maintain the Bretton Woods agreement, right? So Bretton Woods, 1944, the war is winding down. All the major Axis powers come together and say, gosh, we kind of need a new money system because the pound has been rubbleized and, Germany's mark is destroyed. And you got this yen is like confetti at this stage. And the dollar seems to be the last man standing. And we're going to need a global superpower dollar. So they enshrined the Bretton Woods agreement, Bretton Woods being a hotel in New Hampshire. So they named the agreement after that location. And that agreement, Brennan, said, look, the United States is going to run this thing, but we're going to peg the dollar at $35 per ounce, and that's going to be the number. And so anytime anybody in the world wants to trade, they have the security of knowing that the dollar, excuse me, is as good as gold. So that worked for a while. In the 60s, it started to break down a little bit, right? And so they had this London gold pool where they were attempting to maintain the price of gold. And they couldn't get gold couldn't get too far to whack, or it would create these international trade tensions and actual geopolitical tensions. So they were starting to openly manipulate the price of gold starting in 1968, big year for the gold pool action. And then it all really just fell apart. People started to get a little suspicious. France famously said, yeah, we're going to take all these dollars we piled up and take gold. So there used to be close to 12,000 tons of gold inside the U.S. system. And by the time it got skinny down to 8,000, that's when Nixon slammed the gold window. Temporarily, which is always one of my favorite government words, right? Transitory inflation, temporary gold closers. Anyway, so they had to slam that because we were losing too much of our gold. And since then, they've used the gold to attempt to hide the fact that they've overprinted money and just been really running the money system poorly. So that's what they did. So the gold is there. The reason we don't know about it is because, Brennan, they had to use it for things. Well, once you have some raccoons in charge who are able to sort of, for the good of the national interest and to hold the international monetary order together, and you have to sell gold and do things and lease it out and hypothecate it and pretend you have it and sell paper gold you don't have. They started doing all these games. It's impossible for people to avoid dipping their fingers into that. So I know some of it got lifted, right? You can just, I don't 100% know, but pretty close, right? When you have an insecure voting machine, somebody's going to rig it, right? It's just a thing. It's just humans, right? So people started rigging it a little bit, and then they got used to it. And then the bullion banks and the JP Morgans and the Scotia Macadas and the HSBCs, Brennan, they all got in on this whole thing of being able to ring cash registers by manipulating the price of gold, preventing it from rising too quickly, doing these short slams and all that stuff. But they needed physical product from time to time. And this all worked great. Well, honestly, nobody really cared that much except for a few gold bugs, But this all broke in February of 22 when Russia's sovereign reserves were frozen by the U.S. Treasury system under a very corrupt Biden administration. And that taught the world something important, which was you can't trust the U.S. we broke the gold standard. The U.S. broke that. That was an abrogation of our contract. That was a default on the original Bretton Woods. But that's okay. You can kind of trust because, they respect your sovereign reserves. You accumulate U.S. treasuries. It pays interest. Seems to work. That got broken. We breached that contract in February of 22. And since then, it is off to the races. China has been secretly buying as much gold as it can, hiding that as much as possible. And I think what we're seeing now is that we finally got an administration in there. They're adults. They can actually do the math. They've realized that the old system's kind of broken, and you have to back this new system with something. So they've given us the softening language. We're going to create a sovereign wealth fund. It's going to have the assets of the United States people in it. Well, what does that mean? What assets do we have? Treasury paper is not an asset. It's a debt. You can't stuff it with treasury bonds. So what are we putting in our national sovereign wealth fund? It's a good question. Gold would be obvious. Maybe we have sort of like the equivalent of like the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and there's more oil there, and we don't just lease it out, but we nationalize it in a sense. And we cut a deal. Exxon, hey, you come in, you drill this up, you get some, we get some. And some of that goes into our strategic petroleum reserve. Some of it gets sold, and that money comes into the fund. But we're going to monetize the assets of the United States people. That's a very big tell in this story, because the only other countries that have sovereign wealth funds, Norway, Qatar, they actually have enormous trade surpluses. So they actually have something to put into their sovereign wealth fund. We run a budget deficit and a trade deficit. So we don't really have anything from our productive output that we can put into our sovereign wealth fund. So what goes in there, right? It's going to have to be gold, and it's going to have to be things like our national resources, I guess. And we'll have to get back to running budget surpluses, so we would have something to put back in, and we'll have to start running trade surpluses, tariffs, bringing manufacturing home, all of that. This is the biggest revolution of American political and economic structure of anybody's lifetime.
Here's a little footage of them President Trump signing this sovereign wealth fund executive order. Take a listen, folks.
Extraordinary size and scale of the U.S. government and the business it does with companies should create value for American citizens. If we are going to buy 2 billion COVID vaccines, maybe we should have some warrants and some equity in these companies and have that grow for the help of the American people. So I bring all these things together. I think Scott and I will create an amazing sovereign wealth fund for you, sir.
So other countries have sovereign wealth funds, and they're much smaller countries, and they're not the United States. We have tremendous potential in this country, tremendous. You're seeing that, what's happened just in a short period of time. And as an example, TikTok, we're going to be doing something perhaps with TikTok, and perhaps not. If we make the right deal, we'll do it, otherwise we won't. But I have the right to do that, and we might put that in the sovereign wealth fund, whatever we make, or if we do a partnership with very wealthy people, a lot of options, but we could put that as an example in the fund, and we have a lot of other things that we could put in the fund. And
all right, let's talk about two things. What else we could put in the fund? But notice he has hanging in his office a picture right there above George Washington, Andrew Jackson. I have that same picture hanging in my office. He's from the great state of Tennessee. His farewell address, 1837, he said, "Don't you ever get a central bank ever again." He did away with it. He got censured. We didn't listen. We got one in 1913, the Federal Reserve. He said in his speech, his farewell address, that you no longer have to fear any threats from abroad. The bravery of your gallant sons is known worldwide. Your greatest threat is from within. Jackson knew this. They tried killing him 3 or 4 times. The gun misfired on one occasion a couple times. The same gun misfired twice, and he took a cane to the would-be assassin, till his guards pulled him off of him. This guy was a bad dude. I mean, I say bad in 1980s terminology. He was a good guy. He was. I like Andrew Jackson. I've been to his home, the Hermitage, and I recommend everybody go there and tour it. Here he is hanging on the wall of the Oval Office. That, to me, speaks volumes. And President Trump says, we have other things we can do to stick into our sovereign wealth fund. Oh, I don't know, maybe the Panama Canal? So explain to our audience, again, how a sovereign wealth fund might be used to generate revenue. And do you think we're going to the abolishment of the IRS and a federal income tax? What do you think's coming?
Well, I hope so. So this is a theory I've been working on for a little while. Trump 1 and Trump 2 are so different. I got to be honest with you. Maybe you and I think we had a call like this where I was like, I don't know, when Trump was campaigning earlier, let's say July 13th, because everything changed for everybody after that date. But prior, I was like, I don't know, he kind of whiffed on the first time. I didn't really like his cabinet positions. He surrounded himself with Goldman Sachs, swampy people. I was really a little dismissive because I didn't like what I saw in terms of his team selection. Well, then July 13th happens. He's obviously a changed man 3 days later at the RNC. You can feel it. You can see it. I could.
Yeah, I could too.
Most people could. It's just something different. He had a gravitas. He had a solemnity about him, different. And then you get to his inaugural address and he said, hey, God saved me that day. And I'm here to work with God to make, I'm paraphrasing a little, but, to make America great again. Like, this is like he's on a mission from God. And I believe
Reagan,
that.
by the way, Reagan felt that same way after he had the attempted assassination on his life. He felt like, hey, and he started taking his faith a lot more seriously, we're told.
Yeah. So let's imagine that you feel that. And let's imagine that you've analyzed the situation. You realize, okay, the deep state is working against the interests of my American people. It put in a COVID injection into them, which was on balance a very damaging, deadly, bad thing to do with a lot of side effects. That's exploding onto the public awareness at this point. You understand that they've been running schemes and scams and grifts, and that they've been self-enriching and doing all the stuff that DOJ is uncovering with USAID, all that. You know that you had those 51 intelligence officials who signed a letter to say that, that laptop that was real wasn't real and all that. and you know that somebody left a hole in your security perimeter to allow somebody to take a shot at you that very nearly got you on the 13th of July in Butler, Pennsylvania. So you take all of that and you go, okay, step one, I'm going to dismantle whatever this blobby, awful machine is. In the process of that, you start peeking under the covers with Elon and Doge, and you go, wow, this is worse than we thought, right? This whole thing is a circular money laundering machine for the Democrats and a bunch of rhino Republicans. You're like, this is bad. And then you bring in a sharp guy like Scott Bessent, right? He's got Lutnick there talking about the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and they're sharp. And they go, I hate to tell you this, but it doesn't pencil out, right? Our math doesn't pencil out. And by the way, this thing called the Federal Reserve Note, it can't be fixed. It's just a math problem. I don't care how great you are or not great you are. It just can't be fixed. And that was going to break on somebody's watch. We might as well get ahead of that, right? So I'm connecting some dots, making some suppositions here, but this is how I see it. And he doesn't want a place on Mount Rushmore. If Trump pulls off what I think he might be going towards, he gets his own mountain, right? And we'll carve it up. Because if he delivers us from income tax and property tax, he might as well be Moses in this story, because he's going to lead a bunch of people out of debt, bondage, and into actual freedom again. That's possibility here. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but it's now under Kamala, that's a 0% chance. Now it's non-zero. I don't know how likely it is, but he's been talking about that. And Elon has been said, well, maybe we shouldn't have a property tax either, because when you think about it, property tax is a communist idea. Everybody rents their land from the Chinese government. Nobody owns their land. It's rented. Well, I rent mine from my local government. You rent yours from your local government. And you know that's true, because if you don't pay your property tax, they take it, right? That means they own it, not me. So if we could get to a point where we could get property tax off the rolls and we could get income tax, that's great. Now, Chris, that's crazy talk. No, you just saw 2 days ago, Ron DeSantis mentioned, hey, maybe we could eliminate property tax here in Florida. Texas has a bill circulating right now to look at taking property tax out of the state system. You have to replace that with something else. There's a consumption tax. It's a sales tax. It's statewide. It's a lot higher than the current one. But think about that future, Brennan, where freedom comes back to the individual. My choice. If I want to consume, I pay a tax. If I want to save, I save. But I'm no longer caught in this thing where I'm automatically being penalized for the government printing too much money, which causes inflation, which makes my house go up in price, which I get taxed on those unrealized gains. And they call that a property assessment in my property tax bill. If he breaks that cycle, he returns the most amount of freedom to American citizens that the world has ever seen since 1776, completely free. And I think that's going to create the biggest era of prosperity ever. And I think that's what's on his mind. He's not here. You can see it. He's not here to tweak a couple of things and administrate better. He's here to lead us back to greatness. And now we're down to foundational principles. Life,
here he is. Here
liberty,
he is. Listen to this.
Pursuit of happiness.
Yep. Here he is. Listen to this. All right. Come on. Play file.
He's going to be very rich again, and it's going to happen very quickly. It's time for the United States to return to the system that made us richer and more powerful than ever before. Do you know the United States in 1870 to 1913, all tariffs, and that was the richest period in the history of the United States, relatively speaking. In other words, relatively. And they set up the Great Tariff Commission of 1887, and this commission had one function: what to do with all the money that we took in. It was so enormous that they had no idea. It was a blue ribbon committee. It was set up 1887, and what to do with all of the money that we had. And again, Teddy Roosevelt was a beneficiary, because when McKinley was killed, he took over this vast sum of money, and he did all of those national parks and all of the other things. And I'm not knocking him, but he was given a vast amount of money, and that was all made through tariffs. We had no income tax. The income tax came in 1913. As I said in my speech last week, instead of taxing our citizens to enrich foreign nations, we should be tariffing and taxing foreign nations to enrich our citizens. Does that make sense, right?
I love that line, because that's exactly what we're finding out with USAID. We've been taxing Americans so that I can get up every day, work my tail off, and send it to a bunch of Islamists in the Gaza so they can have condoms, which is fine because I don't want them procreating anyway. But in all seriousness, I'm sick and tired of working so that my money goes to some people I don't even don't agree with their ideas, their worldview, their desire to destroy America. And even if I do like them, it's my money and I deserve to keep it. Leo Holman has got a great article today over at leoholman.com. Let me bring it up real quick. LeoHohman.com. He also has a Substack, but let me go to his page. Here it is, right here. USAID funded Boko Haram's slaughter of Christians in Nigeria. Okay. Last week, we reported how USAID, a federal agency operating under the auspices of the U.S. State Department, funded Islamic terrorists that killed more than 3,000 U.S. soldiers. I should not have to write any checks to the federal government anymore. They clearly don't know how to manage it. They don't need it. They're sending it all over the world. And frankly, I don't know why there hasn't been a humongous lawsuit on behalf of the American people and nobody has to send in taxes this coming April because you're mismanaging it. You're involved in gross fraud. You're lying to us. You're not doing with it what you say you were going to do. Why should any of us pay any more federal income tax? I don't understand. Are Americans that tuned out, that ignorant? Have they been so conditioned to be somebody's slave that they don't smell freedom and a guy is giving you the hints of freedom?
That's on the table now. And Brennan, I think that, yes, it's time for us to get back to basics. And look, it's obvious, the United States went off the rails a long time ago and it got taken over by some people who like disaster capitalism, they break countries and they fund both sides of things. Come on, if we went back to before 9/11, who was the top funder of Osama bin Laden?
I'm sure it's the CIA.
Yep, you and me through the CIA. Al-Qaeda, that means the base. That meant the database. That was just a list of people the CIA had. That was where Al-Qaeda started when they started referring to it as the base because they had a database of people that they could call on. Because we were fighting Russians, but then later we were fighting those guys, but then later we were fighting ISIS, and then we had to fund ISIS to fight. And it's just been that game all the way through, and it's ended in this mass slaughter that happened in Ukraine. This is the worst thing since World War II in terms of scale of death, and it's absolutely destabilized the world, brought us very close to world nuclear war, and we didn't have any proper conversation about that, and we never had anybody sort of in charge. And then Trump wades in and says, yeah, I'll fix this, calls Putin up, and we're on our way. That's what we need again, and we have to attend to our own country. I say this waggishly all the time, like, oh, well, if we shut down the national down for the democracy, who's gonna spread democracy? I'm like, look, you can't spread something you don't have. We don't have a democracy. We haven't. Democracy is the will of the people. I'll show you all the data you want that says that if 90% of the people are against something, that has no bearing on whether or not that gets passed into law. Zero. What matters is who's got the best campaign donation, coffers, and what do the corporations want, what do certain foreign interests want, and that's it. People didn't matter anymore. So now we're going to get back to people mattering. That's caused a huge amount of consternation. Washington's in a panic. Oh no, what if the people are involved, in this conversation? They lost the plot. So if you get a company that's supposed to be, making a medical product that saves lives and you find out it's been killing people, get rid of the company. So that's what we're going to see. And I don't know if you saw, but Kevin O'Leary was on CNN, the Shark Tank guy, and he said, oh, they're not cutting fast enough. They should just cut. You come into a company and you see this amount of waste and fraud, and you think you need to cut to here, cut to there and 20% more because you never go as far as you probably should. He's just like, yeah, slash this, burn it. I think we have to do that, and then we have to reinvest in our own country. 40th in education, last in life expectancy, terrible infrastructure. Let's stick to our own knitting before we get all excited about sending money to foreign countries. What did Ron Paul call foreign aid? He said that's poor people in rich countries giving money to rich people in poor countries.
Yes.
Let's stop that.
So where do you think gold is going to go if they revalue it from $42 and some odd cents an ounce to $3,000 an ounce. What do you think the price of gold is at for the average person per ounce?
I got to be honest. The only way it actually pencils out. So let's imagine for a moment you took the argument I laid out that we have this Federal Reserve note system. So you're asking how many Federal Reserve notes should an ounce of gold be worth? And I'm saying we got to break the frame and ask how many ounces of gold do we need circulating under this new currency in order for this to work? Because I don't think there's any number. If we wanted to say how much does gold have to be worth in Federal Reserve notes for this to pencil out, the answer is simple. We take M2. We divide it into the ounces of gold that we hold officially, and we come up with a number like $41,000 an ounce, right? So when people say, Chris, gold's kind of an all-time high, I'm like, well, we haven't added a zero to it yet, and we haven't added 2 zeros to it yet. So remember when the currency system was failing in Austria between 1918 and 1923, right? That famous Weimar hyperinflation. People were having the same conversation probably in 1919, like, ooh, we're up to 58, marks per ounce. That's too much, right? Eventually, it was like a quintillion marks per ounce. It was some dumb number, 12 zeros, So I think we're just starting. Yeah, we're about to add zeros to this, but that's because our frame of reference is the U.S. Federal Reserve note. They screwed the pooch. Sorry for my French. They mismanaged their one and only product. They did a bad job at it.
So would you be shocked that gold would be 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 an ounce?
No. It has to be a number like that in order for this to begin to pencil out at some point.
So you wouldn't be shocked at 40,000 an ounce?
No, I mean, I'd be a little shocked, but it depends how quickly it got here.
Let's say it went to 10 or 20,000 an ounce. What about other hard assets? What about people who are in real estate? What is their hard asset of real estate, a rental house, rental properties? What is that all of a sudden? Their farmland. What's all that's worth, those hard assets now?
I love history. And if you look at what happened during that Weimar hyperinflation we just mentioned, it's instructive. Maybe not a perfect parallel, but close enough. So when you read books about it, Brennan, they're like, oh, these middle-class people, everybody got wiped out. They got wiped out. No. The people who had their wealth tied up in the paper of the country, yeah, that went to zero. But the wealth of the country, the true wealth, it didn't go away. Nothing happened to the bridges, the hotels, the factories, the farmland, the trees, the gold. Those were exactly what they were before the hyperinflation and afterwards. So in times like this, the most important adjustment people can make is flip out of how many dollars is it, how many Weimar marks is it, and flip into how much value do I hold. I'm a huge believer in hard assets, right?
So someone who says, I don't want to stock up on gold for whatever reason, I have a little bit of it, but I'm not a big holding gold guy. It doesn't pay a dividend. It doesn't give me cash flow, but I do own some rental properties. Those people that have been doing it that way, is all of a sudden their $300,000 rental property now $600,000?
That's what eventually will happen once we get this kicked out. I don't know any way around this at this point in time. Besides, we're going to have to look, when you get to this level, you have too much debt in a company, right? Let's say the United States is a company, and we're going through a national restructuring plan right now. This is what happens in a business when a new CEO comes in and goes, woo, this company's in bad shape, right?
Right.
Immediate. Zero-based budgeting, freeze everything, start hacking departments. You throw a few babies out with the bathwater, but it's just triage. Like, how do we fix this quick? In this particular story, we have that company, but the company issues its own money. And that money system is way off the rails. And so now you have to answer that question, who's going to eat the losses? If you go down the deflationary pathway, we just say, oh, all that debt outstanding, we're not going to honor it, doesn't get paid back. You don't pay your mortgage, the government doesn't pay China for the treasury notes it has, we don't pay it. Well, that destroys the system very rapidly because we have a debt-based system. That doesn't work. So the other thing you can try is inflation. Now that spreads the pain out, but not evenly because we all experience $8 a dozen eggs, but that obviously hurts the person on a fixed income a lot more than it hurts a Jeff Bezos. So that's not a fair way to do it either. And I believe, if we can believe that Trump had an epiphany there on that stage in Butler, he's not here to reward a few rich people and harm a lot of poor people. He's not here to do that. He's here for all of us, I think. And you can see it clearly how he listens to people. He's in Western North Carolina, and he's listening to all these people who've been like sleeping in tents, and they're all bedraggled, and he's just locked onto them for 19 minutes, just listening. when you got Elon Musk with his son in the Oval Office, he's just listening, sharing the limelight. So if you know that you have a problem, you know that the Federal Reserve has really outdone itself, has really they goofed, right? Their product may well be starting to go towards what we would call zero. We would experience that as a very high appreciation in Federal Reserve notes for that $300,000 apartment building, that $3,000 ounce of gold. Those will appear to be going up, but you watch. The same number of ounces of gold it takes today to buy that $300,000 apartment complex is going to be the same number of ounces in the future when it's $30,000 an ounce and $6 million.
In other words, your hard asset will just be keeping up with the prices of everything else going up, which is the hedge of inflation, which is why we love hard assets. Okay, I got to let you go. Before I let you go,
there it is.
I bought this about 15 years ago, a redback printed in 1963 under Kennedy. I paid $14 for it.
What does it say on it?
Well, let me show you a screenshot of it. Take a look, folks. I got a screenshot of the United States note. Now,
yes,
this is a very controversial bill because you go online and you research this. There's a lot of people disagreeing as to what this was doing. So I don't know. I wish someone could tell me, maybe you can, what this was really all about, because people are saying, oh, no, he wasn't trying to end the Federal Reserve. Others are saying, yes, he was. Others are saying, no, he just was trying to deal with the prices of silver or whatever else. So I don't know. But what I like about it is it doesn't say Federal Reserve note. It says United States note. And if you zoom in here, that little red, why it's called a red back, is that says Treasury. That's the United States Treasury. Isn't that what that says right there?
Yep. So
it's not a Federal Reserve note. And you see the man signed it, Secretary of the Treasury. It's 1963, which happened to be the year he was killed, right?
Yep.
So what's going on here?
That's the United States government issuing its own currency. So this was the deal. 1913 comes along and, we need this, a Federal Reserve. It's a banker's bank, right? It's supposed to be the banker of last resort, making loans of last resort. It was only supposed to be there for an emergency. They just come through a panic of 1907, which was inspired by and initiated by J.P. Morgan, because they were trying to get something like a central bank installed for many years. And so they created these panics and they said, oh, this is a terrible panic. And it happened because we didn't have something like a Federal Reserve to make loans under emergency terms at discount prices that were punishing for high quality collateral. We just need this ecosystem, little wetlands for those moments of panic. So they installed the Federal Reserve. Only took 20 years and our country was completely ruined, totally broke. 1933, FDR signs the executive order and says it's illegal for citizens to hold gold. You have to turn it all in. And then they exchanged all of the citizens' gold to the Federal Reserve for the Federal Reserve to do exactly what you just showed. Print up some pieces of paper.
Put that back in the middle. Put that back in the middle, guys. There you go. Keep going.
Right. So that's all they did. They printed up pieces of paper and said, here you go. We'll give you all these pieces of paper that mean money in exchange for your gold. Okay, so we carry that along for a while. And then I told you about this whole thing. The gold started to break down post Bretton Woods. And so Kennedy came along in 63 and said, why don't we just print our own money? I don't understand, because really the reason you have a bank do it for you, it's a matter of convenience. So the banks are saying, okay, it's a service. Maybe the government doesn't do its own laundry. Maybe it doesn't wash its own cars. And guess what? You need somebody to manage your money for you. And maybe the government shouldn't manage its own money. Fine. So they were doing that, but then they're bankers, Brennan, so they couldn't help themselves. They needed more, and they started taking more and started taking more. So Kennedy says, well, that's stupid. Why don't we just print our own money then? If they're going to demand that much from us, and that's a stupid idea. So this was just an idea of saying, why wouldn't a nation issue its own money?
Which the Constitution calls for Congress to mint our money.
Yes. And nothing shall be gold or silver. A dollar is 371.25 grains of silver, full stop. That's all a dollar.
That's how you define a dollar. That's how you define a dollar.
That's it. That's what it is. So, but this was one of the most terrifying things because, if a country figures out that you can just print your own money and you don't need bankers, it ends one of the biggest rackets there are. Because you know what banks do to earn all that money? Nothing. I mean, they have to click a few keyboard, that's it. It's one of the best rackets out there, right? If I go to you and you're a banker, Brennan, I say, I need to borrow $500,000 because I want to buy this swank house over here. And you go, okay, here's your $500,000. You just did this and you handed me something, and for 30 years, you own me. And it's collateralized with that asset. And
because what you're saying is today's fractional reserve banking, we're really just creating digits. We're creating digits, right? We just keep recreating the same money in the system and moving it around.
Yeah, and you know, when that money is created, it takes very little effort, but of course then to pay it back takes real effort, and that's the game. That's what it's been. There's no reason at all that a country can't issue its own currency. We don't need bankers. We don't have to borrow it from them. This year, the servicing cost for running that little scheme is going to be $1.2 trillion to the U.S. taxpayer. That is the interest cost on our national debt. Wait a minute. Why do we have national debt? Well, Chris, because you know the Treasury needs more money than it has, so it has to go borrow it. Well, who's it borrow it from? Well, it does this thing called an auction. It has these Treasury bills. They auction on Monday through Thursday, and they get money. Where does that money come from? Well, you know, if anybody has money out there and they want to buy some, what if there aren't enough people buying them? Oh, well, then the banks literally just make an entry and go, oh, I'll buy them. And we have 23 primary dealer banks who make sure that the Treasury auctions. And you created it out of thin air. You created it out of thin air. Out of thin air. And that's the service they provide. And that should cost, I bet I'll do it for $1 billion. But the system has said we need 1.2 trillion now to administer a money system. You go back to that red note, and that was just somebody like Kennedy and maybe Trump going, that's stupid. Why are we paying 1.2 trillion for somebody to loan us money? Why don't we just make our own? And there's no good answer for that.
Is this why? Would this have been one of the reasons he got killed? Was this the Nomes of Zurich that he talked about? Is this his famous secret society speech he gave?
There's really one of two reasons as a national leader you get offed. One is you threaten the bankers, and the second is you threaten the U.S. dollar as a petrodollar. Those two things are proven
wait a minute. You mean like Saddam Hussein, who was talking about going to some kind of gold system? You mean Gaddafi, who was trying to talk the African nations into going to some kind of gold system?
These are huge threats to the banking cartel that's been out there for a long time. They play hardball. They're very cheerless about this. It's power, and that's the system we've been under. But that power comes at a cost, and the cost is our freedom. And I think that's what we're talking about right now, is getting our freedom back.
Well, again, I was going through an antique store with my wife about 15 years ago. Saw it, knew what it was, bought it for $14. And I think it's worth every dollar because it's a piece of history. What say you in closing?
Absolutely. And I hope we get the equivalent of red notes. I think that's what I'm seeing in the gold moves, in the sovereign wealth fund. I'm hearing rumblings around it. This is how Trump rolls. First, you get the hint, couple of hints. He breaks the frame. People start thinking, and then you get this big change. I think that's what's about to happen.
Which means President Trump, if he can do all this, will, without a doubt, go down as an Abraham Lincoln figure, where Abraham Lincoln worked to free the slaves, if folks believe that, you know, the argument, what the Civil War is fought about, whatnot. But he, and maybe Reagan goes down as the guy that freed people from communism. Trump will go down as the guy that freed Americans from indentured servitude.
Freed us from the bankers. It'd be a lifetime achievement.
And he should
go down.
He should go Mount Rushmore for that.
I think we should carve a whole mountain all by itself. I mean, it would be that big.
Wow. PeakProsperity.com. I know I got to let you go. PeakProsperity.com. Chris, we're looking forward to having you with us here on Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th for our National Worldview Weekend. 22nd year we've done a national conference, and it's in the Mid-South this year. Looking forward to having you with us. That's going to be great. Looking forward to it, Brennan. And we also carry his program on the weekends at worldviewtube.com. In the meantime, pick it up at PeakProsperity.com. Thank you, Chris. Thank you. My pleasure. Folks, if you would like to go ahead and mark your calendar now. Is Caleb in the control room, guys? Is it there already? Whoa, I asked the guys to get that up there today. I didn't know they could do it that fast. Look at that. Worldview Store. There's a few things need to be added, but let's go there. Worldviewstore.com. Look at that. Worldviewstore.com. Okay, I asked them to add this. I didn't expect it that fast. All right, there it is. $99. Okay, there's only 350 seats. Okay, you got the hotels, where it's going to be held. We have some more things. We're going to put up some more speaker bios. I see we need to do that. But there it goes. Gordon Chang, Mark Mitchell, Alex Newman, Chris Martinson, Dr. Lana, Sidney Powell, 300 seats. That's it, folks. If you want to attend and hear these people speak in person, and there's only 350 seats available. We are looking to add a Thursday night concert banquet like we do every year. We'll let you know about that. But folks, if you want to attend our 22nd annual national conference. Now, I've been doing the Worldview Weekend since February of 93, but this is our 22nd year to have a national conference. We were in Branson, Missouri for years. We were in Lake of the Ozark for years. Now we're bringing it to the Mid-South, 30 minutes from the Memphis airport, Collierville, Tennessee. It's a very safe, upscale community. In fact, our town square Our town square was Collierville. Let me type this in. Collierville, Tennessee, town square of the year. Our town square was marked that, okay? I don't know if I can find that right now or not, but at one point it was marked as this great all-American town square and marked as the best town square of the year. And it is. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful historic town square. In fact, here's a picture of it right here. Let me see if I can bring that up. Will I go full screen on us or not? Nah, so. But anyway, you just have to take my word for it. It's a beautiful town square. It's a nice, safe community. Highly recommend. It's where our headquarters is, okay? So it's a safe place. I know you hear things about Memphis, but we're not having the conference in Memphis. You're just going to fly into Memphis, which is a very medium-sized airport. So it's easy to get in and out of. Rent your car, grab an Uber, whatever you want to do, and come on over 30 minutes from the airport to Collierville. We have all the hotel information on the website. And again, it's Friday night and it's Saturday. Friday night, all day Saturday into the evening Saturday. You don't want to miss out. Again, 350 seats is all we have. We have lowered the ticket price. I think last year we were like $125 a ticket and $250 a ticket, or whatever it was, $175, $250. We've lowered it to just a flat $99 because by moving it to the Mid-South, we've gotten our price down. We've gotten our price down. It's not going to cost us as much to put it on with the theater that we were renting, the ballroom we were renting and all that. So we're lowering the price. And again, we're just trying to put on a great conference where you can come visit with us. We get to see you, meet these people in person. Now, if you are not able to come join us, you will be able to live stream it, but only if you're a member of the Vault. WorldviewTube.com/Vault, WorldviewTube.com/Vault. If you join the Vault, you'll be able to live stream it, okay? And not only will you be able to live stream this, but coming up this Saturday evening, 6:30, starting at 6:30 Central this Saturday evening, our State of the Union panel with Colonel Rob Maness in studio, J.J. Carroll in studio, Todd Bensman in studio, and myself, okay? State of the Union panel, 6:30, starts Saturday night, February 22nd, Vault members only. April 15th, Dr. Andy Woods and I are going to be speaking for a big Worldview Radio rally in Milwaukee. And if you can't make it, we'll be live streaming it for Vault members only. See, we're trying to do some special things for those of you that belong to the Vault, because not only do you get access to over 35 years of my books, ebooks, audiobooks, documentaries, etc., you get to live stream some events. It's a big part of our general operating budget as well, just like Bella Grace, just like our foundation. We have to do all these things to bring in the income, to cover the bills. So we're trying to do some special things. So you join the Vault now, you'll get Saturday night. You're going to be a live stream, the event coming up April 15th in Milwaukee. You're going to be able to live stream our conference, but you got to join the Vault. But we'd love to have some of you in person, so go ahead and register, because I'm telling you, 350 seats, that's all we have in the theater here in Collierville. You can register now. WorldviewStore.com, WorldviewStore.com. Logan, great job on the graphic. Caleb, great job on getting this up online. This is the kind of thing I used to have to do. I used to have to do it all. No kidding. My wife and I ran this whole organization for years, just the two of us. She's often said, how did we do it? Like, we had no choice. We were stretching every dollar. We still stretch every dollar. But at least now that we're doing more, we actually have some people that can help us. We had to do everything. And we were stretched. But we saved our dollars. We saved our money. is we were frugal. And you know what that allowed us to do, folks? Invest it back into the organization. And by now, we have $1 million in 2 control rooms. All that equipment, it's $1 million. And not that I'm happy we had to spend $1 million on that control room equipment in the studio, but that's what it cost. That's what it cost. Television production is so expensive. The equipment is so stupidly expensive. But that's what the market bears. But that's what it took to be able to run the TV we do, run the network we do. Everything you're seeing, folks, is all computer generated. That little scrolling going on the bottom, everything, huge computers, big computers. That's why you don't see us freezing, dropping. We are very steady, a very steady signal here because we have super high-end equipment. So like state of the art, like big networks do. So my wife and I did a lot of stuff, just the two of us, for years with no help because we were stretching every dollar to build what we knew we could build, which is what you see here. And you guys have helped us do it. And one way you can help us do it is by joining the Vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault. So I'm thankful to be able to say, hey, Logan, Caleb, get this up there. Can you please? And I can keep preparing and reading and doing show prep and being ready for the show. And look, they took care of it and they shocked me. I wasn't expecting that quick. I got some great guys working for us, that's for sure. All right, and working for you guys. They work for all of us. Now, they want to be paid. So we need your support because these guys, they need to be paid. A workman's worthy of their hire. www.foundation.com or worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. Folks, this is another major way to support us so we can push out free programming. This stream is going out free right now. We could do what most of these big groups do. They put it behind a paywall and only you see if you pay. It's a pay to play, baby. Nope. We want to try to keep it front and center in ministry and public service and education. We also have a Sunday night church service. As you know, I'm teaching through the book of Revelation. So check it out. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Now, we are getting hundreds of orders for these, folks. So please go to worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Pack of 20. Get your pack of 20. And these are business cards that you guys have asked for, double-sided, that talk about the mission and mission statement of Worldview Tube. Get a pack of 20 and pass them out to your friends. Say, hey, you guys should watch this network. You won't believe it. And if you can't catch the live stream, you ought to catch the replay because they take their segments and put them online at worldviewtube.com for everybody to watch for 7 days before it rolls into their vault. So please order those. Keep distributing these. Let's grow the network. Let's grow the network. Let's grow this network. We should equally be as big as any of these other guys, right? Because we sure produce and talk about things they don't talk about, right? The truth, research, history, documentation, long format interviews like I just did with Chris Martinson without stopping to sell you soap and pickup trucks. So again, these are the ways we fund it. Help us keep it going, all right? Worldviewstore.com to get your free business cards. Join me now as a first-time guest, thanks to Jill, my editor, for setting this up. Hedia Falco. Hedia, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, since you're a first-time guest, we would love for you to tell our audience all about yourself. You're originally from Iran, is that right?
My parents were immigrants from Iran, but I happen to be born in the United States.
Okay.
So I was, my mom was pregnant actually when she came over.
And what year was that?
68.
Okay. So they I didn't know if they got out with the fall of the Shah or what. But they got out way before that.
So my father came to live the American dream. And so he came to finish medical school and to raise his family as Americans. And they were really excited about moving to the United States. And so part of my background, I was raised very patriotically. My father was a donor to the Republican campaign since as long as I can remember. And so when I went to college, I had a great childhood. I had a great upbringing. And then when I got to college, I decided I needed a relationship with God. And I ended up in Islam because that was my parents' heritage. So it was the natural fit. I didn't actually know any Christians. I had barely ever met any Christians in my life. So everybody in the community was Jewish. And so it was between Judaism and Islam. And my dad was like, you should probably become a Muslim. It's culturally more familiar for me. And so I did. And that ended up, that launched me into the struggle for the soul of Islam, because the first group I came across was extremely anti-Semitic, anti-American. And I thought to myself, oh, this is horrible. I don't want anything to do with this. And it wasn't until I came across a mystical community, which is known as Sufism. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yes, kind of new age mixed with Islam.
Yes, exactly. And that's where I ended up. And I spent the next, 22 years of my life as a very devout Muslim. I worked for the U.S. government in the field of national security. I was basically helping the government figure out why communities were radicalizing. The same kind of awe and fascination I had. Of course, the U.S. government had the same fascination.
Maybe because they read the Quran and the Hadiths and follow them?
Well, that ended up being the simplest of solutions. But for the U.S. government, it wasn't a solution that they could.
The federal government couldn't figure that out or accept that as an ideal, that maybe it's the books they're reading, their teacher, Muhammad, Allah.
You know what? Actually, funny enough, and it actually is tragic that you couldn't convince them that that was the main driver. No matter how much we spent trying to figure out the problem, when you would tell them it's ideology, it's theology, they wouldn't accept that that was the primary driver.
Or their eschatology, which is saying our mufti, our big leader comes through Mehdi comes through global chaos.
Yes. I mean, they just, for the most part, our foreign policy establishment doesn't believe in religion. They're atheists, most of the State Department. And so they couldn't understand why religion would drive people to kill.
And how long did you do this for? That must have been very frustrating.
Yeah, 24 years about, 37 countries. All over. So I worked for the Defense Department. I worked at DHS. I worked for the State Department. I served in our embassy in Afghanistan. My last stint was, I'd helped the FBI throughout my career, but my last stint was at FBI headquarters to develop a program to intervene before a person commits an act of violence and terrorism. And so it was a program I had built on the private sector, and I was brought into FBI headquarters to scale and replicate it across the country.
What year was that?
That was 2015 I started.
Wow. Wasn't there a great purge around 2008?
Of the FBI, you mean?
Of all across the government. My friend Phil Haney, the late Phil Haney. Did you know Phil?
I don't. The name is not familiar.
Okay. Phil Haney was one of the founding members of DHS. And then he got out. He wrote the book, See Something, Say Nothing. And he was a DHS whistleblower. And Megyn Kelly broke his story. He wrote the book, See Something, Say Nothing. And he and I became friends. And he used to sit at this desk and I would produce his show. And he was not allowed to do his job at the DHS. And so all these Islamists trying to come into the country, he would block them. And then he says that Hillary, John Brennan, the rest of these people would override and let these people in. And he would say, I'd have to mark them as down the road.
Not surprised.
DTR, down the road. And he kept all of his records. And he bragged about it in a documentary I made. He bragged about it in a documentary I made in front of 1,000 people, that if President Trump wants to drain the swamp in his first term, I can put his hand on the valve. He'll have to turn it, but I can put his hand on the valve. And that if he'd been allowed to do his job, he could have stopped the terrorist attacks of Chattanooga, the one out there in California. Which one? What city was that? San Bernardino, I think it was.
The San Bernardino shooting, yes.
He could, Little Rock, Chattanooga. He said, I was onto the trail of that whole network. And they indicted him a couple times, claiming that he was violating the civil liberties of these Islamists overseas, right? And that's when he wrote the book, See Something, Say Nothing. He warned many of us that if he's ever found shot, he didn't kill himself. And we're coming up on I think the 5th anniversary of his murder on February 21st.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
He was supposed to be back in my studio at this desk the next month.
And was it determined to be a murder?
Well, initially for 2 years, they didn't know. Even the sheriff came out when someone was saying it was, murder or suicide. He said, we don't know, it's still under investigation. The coroner, I just found out the other night, and I showed the files on TV. The coroner originally marked it as homicide. It was homicide. After the FBI got involved, they marked it as suicide. And wouldn't you know, after 2 years, a suicide note showed up. Even though there's fingerprints of more than one person on the gun, he did it on the side of the road. He was texting with people about a medical procedure he was going to have, and then he was going to be back out on the road, finishing his book and campaigning for President Trump, which, you know, people that commit suicide are always texting about their future plans and how excited they are about them, right?
It's like the Vegas, the Vegas gentleman, his name is suddenly escaping me, but the one, the Green Beret that they said killed himself and blew himself up in the Tesla. I think we still need to learn about what the facts of that case actually are.
100%. 100%.
Yes.
So that's my buddy, Bill, but he was saying in 2008 when Obama came in that they started purging everything across the board, you know, and not teaching the truth. So how were you able to do this by 2015?
So my job, I was a federal contractor. So I basically went where they paid me to go. So it depended on whether it was Department of Justice or it was the military. So they would give me specific programs. Okay, go to Pakistan, figure out what's radicalizing certain communities. What are the bulwarks against it? What could we use here for the United States? And I would go write a report, come back, provide, you know, speak on the report. And in 2015, remember, we had the surge of ISIS recruiting in the United States. So we had over 250 American kids. And when I tell you American kids, I've watched dozens of their videos, and they are literally just yesterday they were a punk kid walking with, you know, a school gang, and then they decided they were going to be ISIS and commit jihad and blow themselves up. So this phenomena was really terrifying for Americans and especially for our law enforcement agencies. So the idea was to build a program that would detect these individuals before they commit an act of crime. And remember, without a predicate, the way our law enforcement works and our FBI works is you couldn't open an investigation without that predicate. And so our idea was that we were going to build these programs, combine them with social workers and other kind of influencers in a person's life so that we would be able to track their movements, understand if they were radicalizing even further. But that whole focus of the FBI shifted after President Trump was elected.
Okay, so how concerned are you about the terror cells here in the U.S., whether we're talking Hezbollah, Hamas? How concerned are you, particularly since our borders have been open and so porous? How concerned are you, particularly as Israel and America are talking about going after Iran's nuclear program? And we have the Hamas talking about who helped, you know, that was funded in part by Iran. You have the talk of repeating October 7th over and over again, and even doing it in America. How concerned are you about the terror cells still in the U.S.?
It's a huge problem, and there's three main elements that I think are exacerbating that problem beyond what I think most analysts are paying attention to. So one, of course, as you identified, was the border. Two was what I've talked about in terms of not just a mission creep in the FBI, but mission chaos. They were investigating grandmas that were taking pictures at the Capitol instead of going after Muslim radicals. So the entire building has a mission problem. And so until Cash and Pam Bondi are able to fix that, reassign, reopen cases, we've got a big vacuum. The third issue is look at the Middle East. Other than Saudi and Qatar, and those are all questionable themselves, but we have large terrorist nations equipped with U.S. military equipment. We have Afghanistan and the fall of Syria that everybody's lauding as some great thing. It's now controlled by HTS, which was Jabhat al-Nusra just 2 months ago. And so with these large swaths of territory controlled by militants and radicals, they have opportunity to train, to plan, and to execute from states. Remember, in Al-Qaeda, they didn't have a nation state to support other than the mountains and caves in Afghanistan. But now they control hundreds of thousands of square footage where they are able to plan attacks. And that's something that's really worrisome.
So are you concerned about an October 7th style attack here in the U.S.?
I would be very concerned about that. But then again, we have this great administration, and maybe they're going to be able to turn this ship around fast enough. Maybe the deportations will be fast enough, the investigations will ramp up, and we'll be able to avoid it. But I don't know how likely that is.
Okay, so the terror cells are here. What do you think it is they're waiting on? I mean, they're going to wait on orders. So what do you think those orders are. I know a few years ago, one of the leaders of Iran said something about, we're very near to you. You guys might want to be careful. We're very near to you, meaning basically hinting we're in your own country. You know, we got terror cells there.
Absolutely.
Will it be Israel and America working together to take out Iran's nuclear facility, go for those underground bunkers that we've been seeing the video footage of, those bunkers, those tunnels with all that stuff in it? Is it going to be that? What will it be before they get an order to strike inside America?
You know, that's a very interesting question because, you know, their timeline is in hundreds of years. You know, their ultimate goal is to conquer America. You know, that's their global expansionist doctrine. So I think their attacks are timed based on a scale of when we are weakest. And so I would like to think that they don't think we're weak at this time, and whether there's going to be retaliation by the U.S., which they know is also a possibility. So I'm wondering if we may see, you know, a period of, you know, strength now under President Trump. And then if they find that moment of weakness, that may be an opportunity for them to strike.
Now, what about the drug cartels? We've been talking a lot with Todd Bensman and Michael Yon and all of our other buddies about this war on the cartels. President Trump is declaring some of these groups to be foreign, you know, international terrorist groups. He may go after and label this for MS-13, the trans day.
They were labeled. They were identified today. MS-13 is included as an FTO.
Okay, so this is happening now. Now,
yes.
we see our CIA apparently is now going to get involved in training in Mexico and helping their government because Trump's telling them, you better get this under control or big tariffs are coming. So we know that there's coming warnings of kinetic war on the border. Todd Bensman was saying to us last night when I asked him, well, if the Mexican government starts going after the cartels, and the cartels are super, super militarized. We've seen the videos that they show and the pictures. They brag about their military equipment. And we know that as soon as a guy gets elected, a mayor or something, who says he's going to take this on, he literally ends up with his head chopped off and put on top of a white SUV we saw a few weeks ago. So could you see the cartels going to war with the Mexican government and the cartels going to war with the American government? He said, if you start cutting into their money supply and they feel like they're going to be obliterated, they have nothing to lose. You know, the old saying, a guy that has nothing to lose has nothing to lose. They're going to go to war. So the question is, at what point do the drug cartels partner up with any of the Islamists? Because we know that the Islamists have been digging tunnels. Some of the actually drug cartels were, I think, the ones building the tunnels, and then maybe cutting deals with the Islamist groups to use some of these tunnels. So how do we know these two groups are like, look, we need to get into the country, we're bringing in drugs, and we're bringing in, you know, sex trafficking, and the Islamists, you know, they want to bring in terrorists, they want to bring in weaponry and whatever. So how concerned are you the Islamists and the cartels might find themselves working together against their shared enemy?
And I think they already have been. So there is very large South Asian gangs in Europe that are basically devout Muslims selling drugs. And so we have heard many times about the border crossings that they are bringing in terrorists. They are bringing people on the watch list over the border. And so I think those relationships have already been formed. Add to that the leftist groups. So we have all of these people that are fighting the Trump administration and all of the people that are now laid off of work. There's thousands of Americans that are now going to be unemployed. So if you combine that group with the terrorist networks and the cartels, I think we have a very dangerous, just this cocktail of unhappy, disgruntled revolutionaries. And so, as you said, the person who has no money has nothing to lose. That also happens to be true for all of these other groups that are now disenfranchised and don't have jobs. So and actually, if you look back at the war in Iraq, the biggest mistake we made was unemploying 300,000 Iraqis. Those 300,000 military and engineers and scientists became ISIS. And so we really should be concerned in this country, too, about creating radical leftist, anarchists that will combine with the threat from the cartels and from the Muslim terrorists as well.
Wow. Okay. So what else are you concerned about that I haven't even asked you about?
Well, I think there's, as people often talk about, is the cyber threat. I actually look at the fentanyl poisoning also as soft terrorism, because we've had, tens of thousands of young people die. They're basically slaughtering our young people quietly. And so combine that with the threat of cyber terrorism, I think there's a lot of quiet forms of terrorism that can kill people that we don't really take notice of. And so they're undermining our way of life, and yet it doesn't make the news.
All right. So how concerned are you when you talk about cyber terrorism, Islam? I mean, I know we talk about China being involved in that, but you think what? Iran? What other groups do you think could be involved in cyber?
Absolutely. Like I said, the HTS Jabhat al-Nusra just took over Syria. So they have all of the technology that Bashar Assad had. So whatever threat we thought Bashar Assad was to the world, now it's in the hands of a terrorist organization. And then remember the biometric data and all of the information and the weaponry we left in Afghanistan in 2013. So with all of those advanced capabilities that they now have in their hands, why wouldn't they be involved in the cyber aspect of things? There's no reason why they wouldn't get involved. Their goal is to destroy our civilization. I don't think it matters to them how.
But if you're going to destroy civilization, instead of flying planes into a building or blowing up, cars or running people down with cars and screaming Allah Akbar while you do it, if you want to bring down civilization, take down their power grid.
Exactly.
Because our own government studies show that if the power grid goes down for a year, 90% of Americans are dead from disease, starvation, and societal unrest within a year. So why not go after the power grid? Which is, of course, what we've been warning about here, because one of our broadcast partners who sat at this desk, we produced his show, TV show, and his weekly radio show was the late Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, who was a CIA analyst, and he was the chief of staff of the Congressional EMP Commission. So we've been warning about cyber attacking and electromagnetic pulse weapons for a long time. But when we did that, we generally did that in the framework of, Russia, China, North Korea, some of those actors. But the Islamist, Iran. I mean, we did talk about it in relation to Iran, because Iran, they've actually bragged about and showed video a few years ago of some kind of missile system on a cargo ship, and they had one of their guys pointing at it and giving an interview, and they clearly were trying to tell us, we bring one of these cargo ships up into now the Gulf of America, and we let off one of these missiles. You're talking about an EMP up over the U.S. Just to remind the audience, they don't have to hit us with a nuclear weapon. All they got to do is get a missile up over the U.S., centrally located, and they could take down all three power grids, or even if they just take down the power grid from the Mississippi over to the East Coast. How concerned are you about that when it comes to Islam?
It's a huge problem. It's interesting because a lot of the foreign policy establishment, even a lot of the analysts, kind of look at these in these boxes. And I don't think those boxes exist anymore. I think in this global economy and in this atmosphere of this kind of binary separation of groups, good and evil, I don't think they're going to stay in their own box. I think they have no problems with becoming partners with Russia, with China, whoever will help them accomplish their goals. I think we need to be on the lookout for that kind of difficulty. And again, I point to Syria and Afghanistan, which, mark my words, you are going to hear things coming out of there, because that's a huge.
Any idea?
Well, just the ability to plan and execute and support terrorism overseas. It's going to be a huge unknown for us moving forward.
Well, how concerned are you with Turkey and Erdogan and all of his talk and things he's saying?
Well, see, that's the thing is that that's his neo-Ottoman, empire talk, and he's more of a strategist. I don't know if he's as but he could support terrorism. But remember, Erdogan is the reason HTS is in power.
In Syria.
So yes, in Syria. So that kind of global dominance is.
Well, he made a comment a few years ago that if Europe didn't watch out, he'd make it where they were afraid to walk in the streets in Europe.
They are already afraid to walk in the streets.
Right, but he made that threat.
Yes, which I'm not surprised at all, because just before Erdogan, you were allowed to walk on the streets of Turkey. None of the women were covered. Now the entire population is covered, and it's mandatory. And there's so much oppression of free speech and of women's rights in Turkey. So that kind of dogmatic interpretation of Islam just bleeds over to everywhere that he has a relationship with, and especially in Europe.
Mm-hmm. We have pictures of James Comey and Mueller, both as FBI directors, giving the top FBI director award to guys that are known, tied to known jihadist. How infiltrated is the FBI these days?
The biggest problem we had was, I don't even know what to tell you. The biggest problem we had was its infiltration at DHS and DOJ. So FBI, we couldn't get policy passed unless it was signed off by the Justice Department. And the Justice Department had tons of Islamist sympathists. And I don't know where they are. I send screenshots when I can to Seb Gorka, who's an old friend of mine. And I'm like, find this guy. I don't know where he is now. But hopefully we'll be able to root some of them out. A lot of them have just scurried away into corners of civil service to hope that they don't get caught. So it's a big concern. It's been happening for decades.
Logan, do we have the video footage of that guy at the mosque outside of Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia? That's in my documentary. What's his name? Who was basically the guy running the FBI under Ray? He just walked off. What was his name? He was like the DC...
not Andy McCabe.
No, he was the D.C. bureau chief, I think, before he went and became number 2 under Christopher Wray. What was that dude's name?
Oh.
Just in my opinion, a really creepy dude.
I can't remember his name.
Well, we'll look for it if you can, Logan. We've played it. We should mark that baby and save it because we've played it so much. But in one of my documentaries a few years ago, I have him, and he goes to a terrorist-tied mosque outside of D.C. that had produced all kinds of troubling people. And
happens all the time.
And he is on the microphone inviting the guys inside the mosque to come be agents at the FBI.
Yes. Happens all the time.
I mean, you can look at this guy and just watch his body language and the way he talks and know you're not dealing with a bright bulb. No, I'm serious. Did you find a lot of these guys are really not real bright intellectual people that made it their way to the top?
Well, so yes, that is absolutely true. So it's basically relationships that get them to where they are. Actually, one individual in particular, I could not understand how he managed to make it that far. It's often built on, and a lot of this has to do with the Saudi influence as well. The Saudi relationships with U.S. diplomats gets a lot of these people, these positions that they otherwise wouldn't have.
Wow. Logan, maybe search Worldview Tube for FBI recruits from terrorist-tied mosque in D.C., Northern Virginia. That was it. Man,
but one thing I can help encourage your viewers is that it's very difficult to make it through the polygraph process and the background checks. So hopefully they catch a lot of them, even if they do try to recruit them into the FBI, that most don't make it, at least not into the FBI.
Does Kash Patel know as much about Islam as, say, you do and some of these other experts? Is in other words, we've produced Kash Patel through our control room for Steve Bannon and other shows we've produced here over the years. But I don't know enough about Kash as far as his full background to know. Is he as up on Islam as, say, we are?
I can't tell you for sure. I don't think that's his wheelhouse.
Right.
I think, he's going to end up relying on Seb Gorka and Mike Waltz. I think for the most, Seb is the one that knows the best. I mean, I've been working with Seb for 25 years, so I know, that's his wheelhouse. So I think in coordination with these other national security teammates, they'll be able to get a handle on it. And there's hopefully some people left in the FBI, but honestly, the past, the 4 years under Trump, they were focused on Russia. Then the 4 years during Biden, they were focused on grandmas and radical Catholics. So I don't even know what institutional knowledge they have left. I think the very best left. So either it's going to be a huge recruiting push or find some of those people that stayed around that have that institutional knowledge.
Now, when did you come out of Islam and how?
So I left the Bureau in 2017. The program shut down. And I went back to Los Angeles, California to hang out with my parents. And I met Jesus on YouTube, literally. I clicked a tweet from a girl I didn't even know. And she said, my pastor saved my life. Actually, I had taken my head cover off right while I was at the FBI. I just decided I was sick of wearing it, and everybody criticized me and told me I was going to burn in hell. And I said, you know what? I'm not worshiping a God that's going to burn me in hell for a piece of fabric. And so then I saw this tweet from a girl who said, you know, my pastor saved my life. And I listened to this pastor preach the simple gospel. Turn from your sin, repent, turn to Jesus, your Lord and Savior, and your sins will be forgiven. You'll live in eternity in paradise. And I said, you know, why didn't anybody tell me about this Jesus? The only Jesus I knew was the one that was in Quran. It was in the Quran, and he was a prophet and all this other nonsense. And I was hooked. I became a believer and went and got baptized, and here I am.
Amen to that. Yeah. Wow. And, you know, isn't that it? I love the way you put that, because we believe that as well. And so sadly, so much of Christianity today has made salvation so confusing, right? They seem to be mixing justification, which is what you just described, faith, believe in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, and thou shalt be saved. Trusting in the work of Christ on the cross, his death, his burial, his resurrection.
Amen.
And his righteous life is imputed or credited to your account through one simple thing: believe, faith, placing your faith and trust in Christ, knowing I cannot do enough good works to save myself, so I trust fully on his merit as the sinless Savior and sacrifice. That's justification. And then the next stage is sanctification, ongoing faithfulness and obedience. But so many in evangelicalism today, particularly my hyper-Calvinist objectors, which they don't care for me because I point out they're works-based. I mean, they might as well follow Roman Catholicism as to be a hyper-Calvinist, because there's a lot of similarities. You know, then they merge justification and sanctification, and you got to slay sin and pursue holiness for final salvation. I'm like, really? How many steps are there to your salvation plan? Because I only see Jesus preaching one: believe, right? Trust, place your faith and trust in me alone. So I love how you put that, because you're singing from the same, you're teaching from the same Bible we believe.
Yes. Thank God there's only one.
Yeah.
I think the hyper-Calvinists, they want to make sure they don't let somebody into the kingdom mistakenly. You know, they're just like, they don't want anybody sneaking in.
I'm not sure some of them want me in. Some of them actually don't think I'm in. They think that I'm not saved because I invited Jesus Christ into my heart. I think a lot of them invited a JC too, but it was John Calvin, not Jesus Christ. So that's, which is very interesting, because John Calvin's Calvinism sounds an awful lot like Islam. I mean, you disagree with him theologically, man, that dude would burn you at the stake, and made sure to use green wood, so it lasted a long time. I'm not kidding. One of my friends is Usama Daktok. He speaks fluent Arabic. He was born in Egypt. His daddy planted Baptist churches all over Egypt. And of course, Muslim Brotherhood burned them all to the ground. But he lives in Missouri, and he's translated the Quran from Arabic into perfect English, not whitewashed at all, like so many of the translations. And Usama has done TV and radio with me for years, and he says, the hyper-Calvinists, their theology sounds so similar to me as that of Islam. So it's really sad, but I love the clear gospel message you're promoting. Let me ask you about that in closing. Egypt. Sure. Egypt's moving troops into the Sinai Peninsula. We see what Muslim Brotherhood has done there. They've battled that over there as well. Trump's like, these Gazans, they got to go. They can't stay here. Jordan, you're going to have to take them. Egypt, you're going to have to take them. We know they're not from that region. We know their DNA doesn't match up. We know that Palestine has been falsely named, going all the way back to the Roman emperor who did it as a turning a knife into the Jews. We'll call it Palestine for the Philistines. Well, it's not, and then comes Yasser Arafat. Oh, we're Palestinians. So what do you think is going on with Egypt? And what do you think is going to happen with Jordan? It's
really interesting to watch, because I spent a lot of time in Lebanon, and the Palestinians in Lebanon still live in camps. And if I'm not mistaken, they still do in Jordan too. None of these countries want to take Palestinians. They're extremely destructive to the indigenous societies. I mean, the cause, if you ask any Lebanese person, what is the cause of their civil war in the 70s, it was the Palestinians. And so as President Trump goes around to each of these countries saying, you're going to have to take some, they all like, absolutely not. The unequivocal no. So I don't know how Trump plans to entice them. I know he's the man with the art of the deal, so I figure he's going to come up with something, but it's going to be, I think, the hardest element of the plan for the Middle East and rebuilding Gaza is where do you relocate the Palestinians? Maybe he creates some kind of border city where he puts walls up so they don't have to integrate to the other society. I don't know, but that is going to be a very uphill battle, and especially Egyptians. They're culturally very different than the Palestinians. I mean, the Jordanians and the Lebanese have a closer affinity, but I can't see Egypt agreeing to that unless there is a huge incentive for them.
And of course, we've been talking, as the Times of Israel has an article about this Ben Gurion Canal that's been proposed for several years, building canal going right through the Gaza. So who knows what is really going to happen there, but we're going to keep a close eye on it. I think we have that clip before we let you go. Logan, roll that clip. Let's see if she recognizes that guy. Here we go. This is from one of my documentaries.
As recently as 2017, Mr. Abate of the FBI was at Al-Hijra Mosque, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. in Virginia, which that mosque, by the way, has at least 20 known jihadis or jihadi financiers or related to jihadis who are either on their board or staff members there or have come from that mosque, such as Nadal Hassan, and gone to Fort Hood and performed jihadi. And they were there in January, the FBI was there in January of 2017 doing outreach and asking for Al-Hijra Mosque to help in diversity as we hire new FBI agents and as they reach out to the Muslim community.
I want to introduce Mr. Paul Abate. He is soon to be Executive Assistant Director at the FBI headquarters downtown and currently the Director in charge at the FBI Washington Field Office. He wanted to offer a few words of support for our community. Give him a round of applause, please.
Thank you, Colin, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. And I want to say, first and foremost, it's an honor and a privilege to be invited and to join you here today. Imam Johari is a hard, challenging act to follow. Wow. I get more than 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
I feel like
if people start walking away, you'll know what happened.
I feel like it's a competition here. No. Greetings. Thank you for having us here today. I just wanted to say a few words. First of all, we are from the FBI Washington Field Office. I have two messages for you today. The first is about outreach and partnership. I cannot tell you how grateful we are, Imam, for the partnership that we share with you for many years here. We need exceptional people of all backgrounds, of all origins in our organization to make it the very best that we can be. So I'm reaching out to all of you here today with that message as well. Any of you, family members, friends, associates from your community who have an interest in doing the type of work that we do and keeping this nation and our community safe, please refer them to us. We're doing a lot of hiring in the FBI now, and we need you. We need your help. We have many jobs, and again, it's essential, I think. We have a long way to go in terms of diversifying our workforce and our employees, but the only way that we can best serve everyone is to reflect the communities that we serve, and we need your help in that regard. So I reach out to all of you for that as well.
I recognize all those cast of characters.
Can you believe that?
Yeah, it was common, and it's probably still common. I mean, I did those outreach programs with them, and we did interfaith activities for decades. I mean, the idea was—
How'd that work out, by the way?
It was a dismal failure. I don't know if it's so the premise behind it is you go into these communities and build relationships. So when they have tips, they call you. And that piece of it, as far as I know, never really came to fruition. The only place we ever get tips from are from family members or other kind of trusted adults or bystanders. It's rarely ever that I ever heard of one from the imam. But that's the premise behind the outreach programs. And remember, this is 2017. This is on the heels of the massive ISIS recruiting in the United States. And so the FBI was just basically trying to get a handle on what was happening. And so this was part of that effort.
One of my friends that comes on here regularly is Dave Gobbets. His son, Chris Gobbets, grew the Sharia beard and penetrated Muslim Brotherhood and came out with 12,000 pages, which became the basis for the book Muslim Mafia, written by Dave Gobbets and Paul Sperry, the well-known columnist Paul Sperry.
I've heard of Paul Sperry, actually.
Well, Dave comes on here pretty frequently. We bring him on only by audio. We don't show his face. He has penetrated over 425 mosques in America. And he goes in and talks to the imams and interacts with them. And he says a good 80
do you remember Steve Emerson back in the day?
Yes, he comes on my show pretty frequently here.
Oh, still? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Tell him Hedia says hi. We worked together for 30 years ago.
Well, I will do that. Yeah, he was just on here probably a month ago. But
I don't even know if he knows I'm a Christian yet.
Oh, well, I will tell him. I will text him. I will text him. I'll send him this. I will send him this tonight after we post it online later tonight. Or tomorrow morning.
He was doing it way before it was cool.
Yes, he was. Absolutely, he was. At great risk to himself, right?
Yes.
But Dave Gobbett says 80 to 90% of these mosques in America are funded by Muslim Brotherhood, which, of course, we know is Hamas. Which is Hamas.
100%. And so is Imam Johari, the head of that mosque.
One of the guys that we had in our backyard here is a guy named Yasser Qadi. Did you ever run across Yasser Qadi?
Oh, sure. He's also a bad actor.
Horribly. And you know who's defended Yasser Qadi? And it came to town and did an interfaith dialogue with Yasser Qadi. He had his mosque right down the road. He's now in Plano, Texas, building like a 425-acre Islamic community. Okay.
Yeah, he's super popular.
Oh yeah, he's like a global rock star in the Muslim movement.
Yes.
I think at one point he was banned from parts of Europe though because of who he was tied to.
Right.
But Yasser did an interfaith dialogue here in town with a guy named James White, big hyper neo-Calvinist. And James said that Yasser, on video, we have the whole thing on video, he said that Yasser was his mentor on Islam. And he sat there while Yasser made all kinds of blasphemous statements about Jesus and the cross and how Muslims and Christians need to hold hands. When the secularists take over, the Muslims and the Christians need to come together and hold hands to preserve religious liberty. And this useful idiot, James White, massive hyper-Calvinist, sat there and did a whole kumbaya for 90 minutes in my backyard. And when Usama Dakdok and Sharam and I pointed it out, so we got ruthlessly attacked by James and John MacArthur's Grace to You executive director, Phil Johnson. John MacArthur's of Southern California. His people came out.
I know John MacArthur.
Ruthlessly attacked us for months, including doxing my home and where I go to church. And continue to bring James White to their church and seminary. The point I'm trying to make is evangelicalism as we know it is helping the jihadist in so many ways.
Oh, that's tragic because I wrote a book just recently released called Living Fearless in Christ. And I have several chapters explaining how to witness to Muslims. And I said, the worst thing you can do to a Muslim is tell them it's the same God. If you tell them it's the same God, why do they need your Jesus? It's a absolute, not only is it a lie, but it's a lie from the pit of hell that sends who you're talking to hell. Yep. So there's absolutely no reason to do that. So this whole idea of interfaith activity, and people ask me all the time, do you want to do interfaith activity? And I said, the only way I will do interfaith activity is if I preach Christ crucified. My only goal is to bring people to Jesus. Otherwise, I have no interest in it.
Amen. Because you're familiar with the Yale document before I let you go. I'm sure you're familiar with the Yale document, right? The common word, as it's called.
Oh, yes.
And all of these so-called evangelicals that signed on to it, Rick Warren, Leith Anderson, National
Not
Social
my pastor.
which is who, by the way?
Jack Hibbs.
Well, of course, Jack Hibbs didn't sign on to it. He's one of us. It's Calvary Chapel. He's one of us. Yes.
Yeah.
No, he would never sign on to it. He would agree with. Of course not. Well, yeah. Well, if you're at a Calvary Chapel, yeah, we're on the same page. But yeah, there's the Yale document, and yet Christians bought it. And you had Phil Haney, the late Phil Haney, talked about the Yale document quite a bit. And the real Muslims know that Christians and Muslims don't worship the same God, because Allah would never take on the form of a human. Allah would never have a child. Allah would never lay down his life for anyone, which had to be, of course, in part why Christianity was so appealing to you, that there was a personal God who laid down his life as a ransom for sinners, Emmanuel, God with us.
Amen. Amen. Absolutely. And I don't know why. I think people are so afraid of the gospel being offensive when Jesus told us we were going to offend people with the gospel. So don't be afraid of offending people, because the whole point you're trying to achieve is to convict them to change. You're not just trying to get along. And that's the problem, is that I think most Americans think we're just trying to get along, instead of saying, you have your beliefs, I have mine. Let me tell you what Jesus means to me. And we can agree to disagree. You don't have to convert people. We have no compulsion in Christianity. God does that. God does the changing. But we could say we agree to disagree. Don't be forced to agree to something that's absolutely false.
Absolutely, 100%. So in closing, what do you do now? I mean, I'm obviously doing interviews, but have you written a book? Do you have a ministry? Are you out speaking? What are you doing now?
All of that. I wrote a book called Living Fearless in Christ. You can find it with my name on Amazon and everywhere they sell books. I run a ministry called resurrectministry.com, and that's an online portal to basically find resources on how to meet Jesus where you are. And I have a comment section. People can reach out to me directly. I counsel dozens of parents around the world who are dealing with kids being exposed to Islam and wanting to convert to Islam, and some that have already converted, and basically counseling them on how they could pray for their child and hopefully encourage them back into the faith. So it's resurrectministry.com. And of course, we're on the Real Life Network with Pastor Jack Hibbs, the devotional I do with my husband.
Excellent. And I'm going to go right to your ministry page. It's linked right there. And there it is. What a beautiful page. There it is. And there's your book, Living Fearlessly in Christ, available now on Amazon.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I am so thankful that Jill, my editor, heard you. I think she heard you being interviewed by Jack Hibbs. And she said, Brandon, you've got to interview her. And I said, well, Jill, I trust you, so that's fine. Set it up. And so we met today here live on the air. And I'm so glad we did. And I hope you'll come back.
Anytime.
Excellent. Well, so glad to have you with us. I want to show your website one more time, promote your book. Look, there she is with Jack Hibbs.
Yeah.
There he is right there. There you go. There it is right there. So folks, check it out. Resurrectministry.com, resurrectministry.com, and also check out her new book, which I saw it up there. I don't know where it went, but I saw it.
Yeah, it's on the wheel. It keeps turning.
The wheel keeps turning. Yeah, there we go.
There you go.
There it goes. There it was. There it was. Living Fearlessly in Christ. Again, Amazon, you can get it. Also, check out resurrectministry.com. Hadaya, thank you. Am I saying the name right? Hadaya.
Hedia.
All right, I got to use my phonics and just write it down how I would say it. Us Americans here in the South. Hedia, but thank you so much, Hedia. And we look forward to having you back. Great interview tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. God bless you.
You too. Check out our website, folks, resurrectministry.com. Hedia. Actually, pretty name. All right, that's fascinating, isn't it? All right, don't forget, folks, we're brought to you by you. Check this out. This was over at the New York Post today. Yeah, today, February 19th. Ooh, Brandon, I got an anniversary coming up on the 21st. 34 years of marriage. I saw this today. Chemical found in U.S. drinking water is linked to 15% higher risk of cancer. Wow, 30%, 33% bladder cancer. Again, why am I showing you this? Because one of the things that we offer here, folks, is not just telling you about bad news, bad things going on. We have to actually offer up solutions. Go to worldviewwater.net. Let me take you there. It's our sponsors page. There it is, worldviewwater.net. Our filters take out, these H2O Centuries take out lead, ammonia, chlorine, pharmaceuticals, bacteria, arsenic, fluoride, all of these horrific things. Now let's get ready for the Dolly cam, because I not only drink this water, so does our studio dog, Dolly. She loves the water, by the way, just as Nelson told us she would. She loves the water, and she is a happy, healthy lab basking in the glow of the big screen television. Kind of dark in here, isn't it? It's dark and cold in here because it's a studio, and we have to keep all the equipment cool. But it doesn't seem to be bothering her. But she's about to get her first haircut. I shave all my labs. I do it myself. I have the electric shears. She's not been shaved. She's about, what is she, 9 months now? 10 months? My wife keeps asking me, will you please shave her? I'm like, no, it snowed here today in Memphis. It's cold. But when in a few more weeks, it'll warm up and she'll get her first haircut. But there she is. But the cold studio doesn't bother her because she has her hair. Like, she'd be freezing in the studio right now. So there you go. She loves the water, don't you, Dolly? She loves the H2O water. It's great for you. It's great for your pets. It also has oxygen in it. They also add oxygen, and you go check out oxygen, adding oxygen to your cells for fighting serious health issues, right? So please go to worldviewwater.net, get your water purifier, your water filter, as she now is up and walking into the control room. She loves to go in there and see the boys in the control room. She gets kind of lonely on the weekends when the guys aren't in here to come up here and visit in the control room. Get your water filter for yourself, for your pet. Now, if you want to go and find out all of our sponsors, here you go, worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. They're all there if you're looking for them. Of course, this here is our biggest one, Bella Grace. Bella Grace is our biggest. I'm going to take it right here, right now. This is loaded with 3 powerful ingredients. You guys know collagen, cat's claw, and anti-inflammatory, astaxanthin that crosses the brain-blood barrier to take on free radicals. Highly recommend this. My hair growth has been quite amazing since I got on this in December 2nd, 2023. I've not had any Pepsid since then. This has cleared up my problem with a leaky gut, apparently. And my hands don't crack and bleed. I sleep better. I only get up once a night, whereas I used to get up 2 or 3 times a night. It's got 80 clinical trials. Melissa takes it every day. I take it every day. Logan, are you still taking it every day? He says he's fallen off and he's got to get back to it. Oh, that's fine, Logan. You don't want to live forever. That's fine. There you go. Somebody's really talking you guys' ear off in there. Who is that? They're producing another show. I can hear it. Melissa loves the Bella Grace skincare. Check it out there. Then the weight management, that's all natural. And Meredith with Bella Grace told us the other day that this is really good for your cardiovascular health, cardio health as well. And then there's the restorative sleep gummies. Those are brand new. Those have like 10 different things in them, botanicals that are also very good. A lot of great products at Bella Grace. Check it out, melissahousebg.com, Melissa, Howse, melissahousebg.com. The other thing we do every day is we swish with New Me. This is loaded up with what's called glutathione. You go back to worldviewtube.com/sponsors, you'll find it, or just go to swishforlife.com. Swish with this for about 3 minutes, then swallow it. You're getting, or spit it out, whichever you want. You're getting glutathione in your system within 90 seconds to detox your cells. Some studies show it may clear out mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. Of course, you know about the glutathione. I mean, the Gatatana, in addition, that's the trifecta I take every day. And last night, I showed you that article. Pull that down real quick, guys. Let me show them the article I pulled up last night, showed you. I want to show you that again. Dr. Lana sent me this. Look at this. This is from July 6, 2005. Man figures plankton stopped his rare cancer. He was only given a few months to live, and he started eating the plankton that he was raising for like sea fish and stuff, shellfish. And out of that ended up coming what we have today, Gatatana, because David Hunter knew him and worked with him. And now today, I'm not making any claims. I'm just showing you the news. All right, government, if the feds are watching, I didn't make a claim. I'm just showing a daily news channel. So yeah, chill. they might sue me for $8 billion. And they go after Dr. Eric Napute during COVID for what? Recommending zinc and a few things. So anywho, there's the article. Not making a claim. There's the article. And David Hunter worked with him. And then eventually comes Global Plankton Association. Now, Melissa House, GPA.com. So go there and get your plankton, your phytoplankton. By the way, I take this every day in a drink. You see me drink it many nights here at the desk. And Dolly takes it every day. She gets half a scoop on her food every morning. Great for your pets as well. There are some very important trace minerals, about 5 trace minerals in here that are great for dogs. Okay. So again, if you want your dog to live longer, one of the things you want to do is load them up with antioxidants, just like us. And she's back on her blanket. Look how cute she is. Of course, we want her to live forever. One reason we want them to live a long time is because we're so dependent on them. But not only are we so dependent on them, it takes a long time to train them. My wife's like, do you really think you could go through this puppy thing again? She's about worn you out. She has been a little bit of a chore as a puppy, but she's healthy. She's happy. She's healthy. And that's one reason why she's a chore is she's very active. Let's just put it that way. She hasn't been hard to train. She's a good girl. Aren't you, Dolly? Leave me alone. I'm sleeping. But she gets her Gatatana every day. Have a scoop on her food. So go there, folks. Get your Gatatana for your pet as well. But you can take it as well. Now, you can get the pet product, the pet version. I don't get the pet version. I just get it for me and Melissa. And then I share my Gatatana with Dolly. Okay? So there you go. Melissa House, GPA.com. These are just a few of our sponsors that make all of this possible. And it takes all of it to keep the funds coming in, to pay all the bills, to keep the network going. So thank you for supporting your health and our network by using Numi, Gatatana, and Bella Grace. All of it is available on one website. We've now got it all over at one website now, worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors to find out about all of our sponsors. Join me now is Michael Reagan. Remember him? Syndicated talk show host. He's still a syndicated columnist, author of many books, including a couple of them that were New York Times bestsellers. And again, you can read his column each and every week. His latest one, I think February 13th, unless he's got one out before that, since then, Rooting for Musk and His Chainsaw Boys. We're going to get into that. Ask him what he thinks about the Panama Canal, something his dad had a lot to say about, and so much more. He is joining us now, Michael Reagan. Mike, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Good to see you.
You too, my friend. Let's
God,
first...
you look so sharp. I'm so relaxed in California.
Yes, you are. You are. I just, I'm just trying to, you're the one that taught me clothes make the man. And you know that. You told me that.
I've had a very busy day. So I said, but this is Brandon.
No, I'm saying for me, you taught me. But you taught me clothes make the man. That's what you taught me.
I learned that in Latin class at a military school when I was growing up.
Yep. I haven't forgotten. It's a great line. First of all, I want to ask, how are your family? How's your family? How's your daughter? I think your son-in-law is a first responder, because we have not talked on the air since the horrific fires of Los Angeles. Bring us all an update.
Ashley raised $100,000 to help St. Elizabeth's School, where 97% of the families lost their homes that they lived in. Most of them were renters. So it's not a big money area out where they were. So she's doing very well at that level. She is with child at this point in time.
Wow, congratulations.
In May. And we're not going to name the child Brandon. I don't care what you ask. Not going to happen. Joe's just been busier than you can be. I mean, as far as a first responder, with all the looters that were out here, the fires, the rioters, all of those things going on. It's been very, very busy. And it's just sad to look at what's happened with the fires out here. Even worse to look at the leadership or lack of leadership for those fires. And I remember Brad Sherman, who at one time was my congressman, and I talked to Brad every once in a while. And I sent Brad a video. I said, Brad, you're talking about the Palisades fire. But why don't you go back and look at 1961 and the Bel Air fire, where 484 homes burnt, including my Uncle Moon, Dad's brother's home, burnt. Why don't you go back and look at 1938 when the Palisades burned? And the same issues that we have now with water and what have you were the same issues in 1938 and 1961, and no one has done a damn thing about it in all of those many years. Don't you think it's about time that we start doing something about it? We've done nothing. And this is the problem with government. You know, they put Band-Aids on things. They don't think about, let's go back to the beginning. How did this start? How can we fix it from that point forward? Not just fix it at this point where we're at, because if you don't go back to the beginning, you'll never really fix it. And to see what's happened to these homes, these treasures that these people have, and see them lose absolutely everything, and there's nothing but dust left. And the one woman who went to her home she grew up in, her father built it 60 years ago. She was just looking for a brick that her father laid at the foundation of that home so she could touch something her father touched when they built the home. And most of these people, the money was wrapped up in the home. So the home's gone. It's over.
That's tragic. And a lot of these families,
tragic.
A lot of them aren't going to be able to afford to rebuild, is what I'm hearing, right?
No, I mean, you know, they've lived in the house for 30, 40, 50 years. You know, most of the houses were like paid for. That was their nest egg. The nest egg's burnt to the ground.
Yeah.
They have no nest egg. It's gone. And there's one family that we know of, old school, didn't invest in anything, just bought a house, and they put all their money aside and all their jewelry aside. They put it in the Bank of America, in the Pacific Palisades, in a safety deposit box to keep it safe. The bank melted.
Are you serious?
And their safety deposit box took everything. You have no insurance if you have safety deposit boxes and they melt. You don't get buy insurance on a safety deposit box. So they literally have nothing.
Ugh.
They don't have jobs. They have no home. They have nothing. And our friend, you know, their son-in-law is going to be taking care of them, but their son-in-law, his house survived. You know, you could say, luckily, there's nothing to go home to. There's no school. There's no bank. There's no restaurants. There's no grocery store. There's nothing there. There's no infrastructure for the house you might build when you finally get a permit and go ahead and build it. I mean, it just everything was absolutely wiped out.
Mm. Well, we'll continue to think and pray and follow this. This is not going to be a story that ends anytime soon. It'll be decades, right?
It's going to be a long time. And then you deal with insurance. Our friend whose house was saved, the insurance company won't pay for the cleanup because it's just, you know, it's dust and ashes all in his house, but they don't pay for cleanup. So he'd been better off the house would have burnt down than they would have had insurance. But you have California Fair, which is where a lot of people buy their insurance. Well, they have no money. They're already bankrupt with everything that's been, you know, laid out there. And so now they're trying to get permission from the state to be able to lay off the cost of rebuilding all these homes, lay it off on all the people's homes that weren't burned down in the fires. So I'll pay a fee and everybody will pay a fee, you know, to the insurance companies to rebuild, you know, all these homes. I don't know where people are going to get the money.
It's pitiful. Well, thank Ashley for what she did as well, raising some of that money.
She's amazing. Yeah. She's amazing.
She
amazing.
Is. And congratulations on the soon and coming addition to the family, another grandchild. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about.
And Cameron's doing well. Cameron's doing great.
Good. Tell him and his wife and kids hello as well. Tell me how, because this came up tonight in one of the other interviews with one of the other guests. What some believe is a difference in the first term and the second term of President Trump. Some of it, of course, is he learned how the deep state and the swamp works. But others are saying maybe his near-death experience on July 13th, the assassination attempt on him, had an impact on him. He says God providentially, I think, saved him. I agree. I think it was providence. And that maybe he realizes now he's been saved for a higher mission and calling. And I said to the guest, that's a very good point. I'm going to have Michael Reagan on later. I'd like to ask Michael, what did he see in his dad change after the assassination attempt on your father? Did he also think, okay, I'm going to reevaluate, God preserved me, therefore I'm just going to seek to do X, Y, or Z? Did it have an impact on his faith and his presidency at all?
Actually, he stated it. He didn't think it. He stated it in public. That he believed he was saved for higher work, higher power, more to do. So it wasn't just something he thought about. He thought about it and verbalized it to the world, is what he did. And it does change you. And yeah, I believe it had a tremendous effect on Trump. Missing by an earlobe, basically, from being completely taken out. You start to say, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe I was saved for a higher power and to be able to do more things. But I think a lot of it has to also do with the fact that, he was reelected. He learned from the first term when he was in, and he's got one term now to get things done. And he's going bat out of hell fast to get as much done as he can in that short amount of time. And I applaud him for what he's doing. But yes, do I think the fact he survived an assassination attempt and missed, in the second one, they found the guy before he was able to fire a bullet. Do I think that had a profound effect on him? Absolutely, I believe it had a profound effect on him, as it has a profound effect on my father. Now, with my father, and I think I've told you the story, after he was shot, he never went to church again until he got out of office, because he didn't want to put people in harm's way. If maybe there was another assassin out there who wanted to take him out, and he remembers looking out the rear window of his limousine and seeing people laying in their own blood with bullets that were meant for him on March 30th. And he didn't want to put people in that position again. So he didn't begin going back to church till after he got out of office. And we had that conversation on Air Force One on, Good Friday, 1989.
I want to show Mike's website, one of a couple of websites, but this is his ReaganLegacyFoundation.org, ReaganLegacyFoundation.org. He works with he and Colleen work with a lot of young people to help them understand liberty, freedom. They help sponsor trips, education, training, a lot of work to pass on to young people the values, the worldview, to maintain liberty and freedom. And if you want to take part, donate, check into it, find out about the programs they offer, ReaganLegacyFoundation.org, ReaganLegacyFoundation.org. Michael, you have an article out February 13th, rooting for Musk and his chainsaw boys. Tell me about that, because your dad, I remember telling you a famous story when you were, I think, riding to the ranch one day as a child. I think maybe you're asking for raising your allowance or something. And he was talking about
Children always ask for money. You know that. You got a child. A couple of them. Don't they always ask for money? Yeah. Yep. If they're not asking for money, they're asking for a dog. So, there you go. I was asking for money from Dad, and that's where he told me about the tax system in America taking 90% of everything he owns. But he said when the president's elected, he'll give me a larger allowance. So I was really praying. I didn't care Democrat or Republican. I was praying for a president to give him a tax cut so I would get an increase in allowance, which he gave me after Kennedy gave everybody a tax cut back in his term, if you will. So, I'm rooting for it. Listen, my dad, if you go back to his campaign, he was railing against the Panama Canal.
Yep.
You look at this, and I talk about these things because every one of them is tied to Jimmy Carter. I mean, Jimmy Carter gave away the Panama Canal. Jimmy Carter gave you the Department of Education. I mean, and you're going, we tried to get rid of it back in 1979, 1980, 1981, and it was tough to do. That's where Dad makes the joke about, if it's built by government, it's the hardest thing in the world to get rid of. It's like, life forever. And so I'm hoping that with a Musk by the side of Donald Trump, that they're able to accomplish what my dad tried to accomplish back in the 1980s with the Panama Canal, with the Department of Education, and so on. But it's interesting that we're fighting in 2025 now. We're fighting against the same issues that we fought about in 1980s, all given to you by Jimmy Carter back in 1979 and 1980 when he produced these things and put them, on the public table and taxed the hell out of us and ruined the education system in America.
Tell me why you believe it was a good thing your father did not win the presidency in 1976, and why you feel it's a good thing that President Trump didn't win re-election, or at least, go back into the White House in 2020.
Well, I said to Margaret Thatcher the morning after we buried my dad, and she said, "Oh, Michael, think of what we could have accomplished had your father been elected in 1976." I said, Lady Thatcher, had he been elected in 1976, the Cold War would still be going on, the Berlin Wall would still be up, nothing would change. And she said, "Why would you say that?" I said, "Well, where were you in 76? Where was Lech Walesa? Where was Václav Havel? Where was Helmut Kohl? Where was Pope John Paul? And where was Mikhail Gorbachev? None of you were in place." But in 1980, after the loss in 76, where were you? All of you were in power or coming to power, as Mikhail Gorbachev was in 1985. And the team was there looking for leadership from the American president. And I think with this president, Trump, had he been reelected in 2020, I don't think he would have come close to accomplishing what he's going to accomplish this time around, because of the knowledge he has, the people now he has in place, he would not have had in place back in 2020, but now they are in place. And now he's able to go out and really lead and, put the world back together after being literally blown apart by this last administration and others in the world who have the same belief system as Biden and the leftists have in this country of ours.
In our final moments here, Michael, tell me what you think about the speech by Vice President J.D. Vance in Europe. Talk about what you guys are doing when it comes to freedom of speech, someone being arrested for silently praying on the sidewalk in front of an abortion clinic, this unfettered immigration program. What do you make of the vice president going over there and really telling the truth right to their face there in Europe?
I think you're looking at the replacement for Trump in 4 years when JD speaks. I thought it was an amazing speech. Somebody wrote an op-ed piece and said it was Reagan-esque what Reagan did with the tear down the wall speech. And that's probably pretty close because he hammered them. And they needed to be hammered. As my father had to do that with the tear down the wall. He had to tell these people, listen, it's about your values. You're disintegrating your values. When you can't have free speech, when you're arresting people for simply speaking, and you don't believe in free speech, you're disintegrating right before your very eyes. And we voted in America to get back to free speech. And Europe needs to learn from that. And they need to get back to free speech, or they're going to go the way of, if you will, the Democrats, the left, and what have you. And you're going to find conservatives, good conservatives, taking over the country. But again, you can't go in. You can't go in anymore and just say and be Mr. Nice Guy. You got to be tough. My father, when he gave the tear down the wall speech, the State Department didn't want him to say that. When my father talked about the evil empire, the State Department almost went apoplectic that my father would say that, the evil empire. But you have to do that. And we need to learn from Trump. Look what Trump's been through. He doesn't back up. America needs to stop backing up and start pushing forward and show leadership. And that's what J.D. Vance did. Can you imagine Kamala trying to do that?
No, our lives would be so different, as you know, and this show probably wouldn't be here, or we could be very careful what we say. I think we'd be looking at what's happening in Europe, where people are being arrested and charged for simply saying, I'm concerned about illegal immigration.
Yeah, that and what have you. And I'm really impressed with the fact that the president put the photograph of my father back in the Oval Office.
Hey, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up, Mike.
Yeah. And not only that, they're using Nancy's rug that Nancy had, using that in the Oval Office also. There's a lot of Reagan things going on in the Oval Office, and I think that's really good. So it seems that he's learned a lot over the years, In those 4 years, he learned a lot, and pray God he was missed by that bullet. But I think it ended up, as I said, we talked about earlier, I think it changed his life. He said, I'm here for a purpose. And remember, Pope John Paul was shot not too many weeks after my father was shot. And both of them went on to lead the world, bringing freedom to Poland and wrapping it around and taking down the Berlin Wall. A lot can happen from when somebody can take a moment like that and turn it around into a positive thing, like he did, like my dad did, like Pope John Paul did. We've got great leadership.
Yeah, you brought up something very interesting there, Mike. The rug. You're seeing the rug that's in the Oval Office now was the one of the rugs in your dad's Oval Office?
Yep. It was the one, yeah, there was actually two, and I think this is the one Nancy picked out.
I thought most of these guys took those rugs with them and maybe to their library.
Oh, no.
So you're saying the White House, all those archives, those are all stored?
We have a facsimile at the library. So we have facsimile. If you go to the library, we have an Oval Office there, exact replica of the Oval Office, and we have a facsimile of the rug. But a lot of times, what you'll find is we'll loan things out, like the Bible that Dad was sworn in on. Went to the vice president under Trump the first time around, and he was sworn in on that Bible. So a lot of times you'll see things that are loaned out. I doubt if we would have loaned it to Kamala.
Let me promote this page again here, ReaganLegacyFoundation.org. In addition, folks, of course, you can find all of his columns each and every week. He's a syndicated columnist. Just type in Michael Reagan columns and they'll pop right up. But I would urge you to go donate, get involved, find out about the projects of the ReaganLegacyFoundation.org. Anything in particular you want to say about this, or anything you have coming up, or anything else you want to let the audience know about?
I want to thank everyone. We did such a great job on fundraising for those really terribly hurt by the fires in Ashley's neck of the woods. But the great job we did on the brick project, St. Mary Église, Normandy, France, we've ended that because we basically used up the plan that we're able to use at St. Mary Église at the museum there. But we're really concentrating on the kids that serve on the USS Ronald Reagan. We supply scholarships to them each and every year. We also supply scholarships to their family members at home, trying to better their education and be better while their loved ones are out on the Reagan. So it's really important to give them scholarships. We do it each and every year. Nobody but us gives scholarships to family members at home, bettering their education. So if you donate whatever, and then we pack it together, we give $1,000 scholarships to the kids on the ship, $2,000 scholarships to the men and women at home waiting for their loved ones to come home. So it doesn't matter what you give, we just add it all together and pile it up and we send it in the scholarship. We just sent out some scholarships. In fact, last week, I think it was, some of the kids on the ship. And it's really nice to be able to do that and share stories with them and what have you.
Visit the ship?
And that's it. I have been, she just got back from Japan. I was in Japan a couple of years ago. In fact, I was on the ship when Nancy passed away with Colleen and was friends. We were passing out scholarships, but it was in Japan. It's a long trip. And she came back to California, and she was in San Diego for like a minute and a half. She's now up in Washington getting refitted. So she's up there with the crew refitting and getting it all prepared because she was overdue because of all the stuff going on in the Middle East and all that. She was the head of the 7th Fleet. So when you heard anything about the 7th Fleet, the Reagan was the head of the 7th Fleet in out there in the middle of the ocean. So she had to get some redos on her other stuff. So they're doing that and making her all shining and bright again. But it doesn't mean we don't do the scholarships for the kids because they're still working on that ship.
Wow. Reagan Legacy Foundation to make those contributions. Here's the walkway to victory he was just talking about. You guys raised a lot of funds for this right there, and there's pictures of it. All of the projects, what they're up to, including scholarships for the young folks on the USS Ronald Reagan. You can, again, be a part of this, make contributions. ReaganLegacyFoundation.org. I have all that right, Michael?
You got it. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Michael. It's great seeing you. Greet Colleen, Ashley, your son as well. Cameron, tell them all hello. And again, congratulations on the next grandchild on the way. And if I don't see you before next month, happy birthday, as I think your birthday's coming up March 18th, I think.
You got it, my friend.
Thank you, Michael. Michael Reagan checking in. Check it out. ReaganLegacyFoundation.org. ReaganLegacyFoundation.org. And then check out his weekly column each and every week. If you just type in Michael Reagan column, it'll pop right up. All right, that's a fast program tonight. Let's go to the dolly cam real quick before we call it a night. Is she still sleeping? I probably need to get over there and wake her up and get her out to get some exercise so that she'll actually go to bed tonight. They're wheeling that robotic dolly cam around. It's coming around. I see it. Oh boy, she's really sleeping tonight. Switching beds. Yeah, she keeps jumping between one pet bed to the other. That's right, because the camera's pointing at the other one. We have 2 pet beds in here because she's been joined by one of the mini schnauzers lately. Well, there you go. Hey, by the way, remember. Oh, yeah, you heard me talking about you? We do have, again, the big news tonight. You can register for the 22nd Annual National Worldview Weekend Conference. Of course, we've been doing these since February of '93, but our national conference we've been doing for 22 years, and the guys surprised me tonight, Logan, Caleb, they surprised me and they got the page up. So it is going to be here in the Mid-South, as I told you earlier. On Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th, the concert banquet. My grand piano player will be there. I'll do a few numbers, and I have a keynote speaker this year at the banquet. That'll be Thursday night. We'll get that information up this week, likely. Been negotiating the contract with the venue. But if you want to get tickets for the October 3rd and 4th, you better do it, because we lowered the price of the tickets down to $99 because we were able to actually carve out a lot of, cut down some expenses, not being at the resort we were at. They were great, but it wasn't cheap. We got things down in prices, so we're going to pass the savings on to you. Tickets are $99. We only have 350 seats, so when they're gone, they're gone. And again, keynote speakers will include Mark Mitchell, Gordon Chang, Alex Newman, Chris Martinson, Dr. Lana, and Sidney Powell. You don't want to miss out. Again, worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. All right, roll the music, boys. Oh, look at that. She just flipped back to the other bed, guys. She went over to the other bed. She's playing musical My Pillow pet beds tonight. Yeah, we can't keep up with you. Plus, you're over in the dark more when you're in the corner there. Oh, all right. All right, great show as always. You make it possible. Do you want to go outside? Why don't you come over here and say hello? Come here. Come on. You haven't said hello tonight, have you? Come here. No? You want a treat? I can bribe you to come over here. Well, you are not getting up, are you? Just staring at me. All right. You make it all possible. Here she comes. See, you got to play a little hard to get, I guess. Typical lady, right? Play a little hard to get. She'll come over here. Worldviewfoundation.com. Let's just see what happens. Worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. I played hard to get and you came over, didn't you? Huh? Are you a good girl? Huh? Yeah, you're a good girl. All right. You doing all right? You doing all right? You got a birthday coming up yourself this May, don't you? Yeah, you'll be a year old. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Tell everyone about us. Get your free cards at worldviewstore.com. Thanks for watching. Take care. May God save America.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work,